Good morning. This is the Eager Beaver Show.
You are listening to a True North Eager Beaver Media Incorporated podcast. The True North Eager Beaver podcasts are proudly brought to you by our founding sponsors, the Misfit Mysteries from Corvid Moon Publishing, your source for science fiction, fantasy, and cozy mysteries featuring a broad diversity of characters, CanadianTarot.com, your uniquely Canadian online eclectic tarot community, and the Peppermaster, hot pepper sauces made from farm-fresh ingredients to thrill your taste buds and expand your mind.
Forgot to turn the cameras on.
Well, good morning and hello, kids, and welcome to season 4 and episode number, I think it's 602, but I could be wrong.
Correct. No,
Of
that's
the
correct.
of the Daily Beaver Morning Show. 100% Canadian. I am your host, the Eager Beaver, pronouns he, him, hey, Mr. Beaver, and with me is, as always, is my good friend, Mr. Grizzly. Today, recording day is Friday, March 14th. Sorry, I'm tripping over my tongue here. 2025, and it looks like it'll be a bluer sky day today than it was yesterday here at the Beaver Lodge. So it was still a little grayish yesterday. But hey, we got sunshine in our hearts, right? Because we're getting off to a fresh start today. In case you haven't been keeping up. A big thank you goes to our podcast founding sponsors, the Peppermaster, the Misfit Mysteries from Corvid Moon Publishing, and PsychicTarot.com. Before we go any further, though, the most important thing we do every day. Mr. Grizzly, how's your mental health today, sir?
Well, I didn't get to sleep until around 4 a.m., so
Yeah.
I'm what you would call a walking zombie. Yeah,
Gotcha.
walking zombie.
I am doing well today. Yesterday, I was doing well until about 5 o'clock in the afternoon. For the kids, because I just told Mr. Grizzly, by the way, if you see the microphone is on this side today, if you're really paying attention, that's because everything is set up. We just have to test it. Which, of course, is going to mean 5 hours of screaming and yelling as things go wrong. But we just have to test it, which is what happened yesterday because I got everything set up. And then yesterday, for the first time, I was introduced to the world of Mac after being PC forever.
There's a learning curve.
There was a lot of, where is everything? Yesterday. And really just silly things like Control-C for copying and then Control-V for pasting. It's another button that I have to use. And because I don't actually have a Mac keyboard, typing in French is very, 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 very painful and long. So I might have to go invest in a Mac keyboard because being a Francophone, I do type and write in French a lot. So and having to press an E and hold it and then scroll for which accent I want and then continue the sentence really breaks down lowers the 80 words per minute typing rate. Especially in French, especially when you have to write like intéressé and there's 3 accents in one word.
I guess I've always done it that way, so for me it's nothing new.
Yeah. So it's a little weird. But hey, we'll get. I'm a beaver that's not too old to learn new tricks. So
I just learned it's Pi Day.
Oh yes, Pie.
Pie.
Little Homer Simpson. All right, kids and cuz, we got a show for you today. Because, well, like I said, it's a very big day. It's passing of the torch day. Today is the day that Prime Minister Justin Trudeau, who still is Prime Minister for a few hours yet, will be officially stepping aside to make room for Prime Minister Mark Carney, who will be sworn in today, as well as his cabinet, his first cabinet, to take on the role of Prime Minister for however long it's going to be until we go into an election. Of course, Prime Minister is still Prime Minister during an election, but we're in caretaker mode at that point. And then we will find out. The two dates that are being thrown about are April 28th or May 5th. Who actually will be the Prime Minister for an extended period, let's just say, or a regular amount of time. I have nothing to go on to say April 28th or May 5th. I would probably think May 5th only because Easter is around April 20th, and people will probably people will be really busy doing planning, but try to have a little bit last moment, long weekend time with some family before going full tilt, and they might want to leave themselves more than 8 days for the finishing touches after that little break, just to make sure that all the I's are dotted and T's are crossed, I would assume. So my personal thinking, just based on giving yourself enough time to make sure everything is just spiffy, would be May 5th. And my consideration for that would be is, given that I would expect it to be, if the election period is between 37 and 51 days, given that I expect it to be more closer to the 37-day side of things, you want to make sure that all your logistics are pretty much pat down, because you don't want to lose a day or two of campaign messaging to, like, why did that go wrong, or why did the plane not take off, or why was this reservation missed or something. So, and that you have an announceable, every day. So, and then leave room, of course, for things that will come up, because things will come up because, well, who we have south of us, and he just likes throwing curveballs in the middle of stuff, right? So, my guess is that you would probably, and given that I assume that Carney is a bit of a planner, he might want to take more time. Now, also given that we saw yesterday, right, that he already had his disclosure papers and everything file ready, so the second he was determined leader, he'd file them, and the very next day said, hey, by the way, all done, everything's disposed of. Maybe that's already charted, and they are ready to go on the 28th. So, some people are hyper planners. It wouldn't surprise me if a central banker. Wouldn't have surprised me if Chrystia Freeland either, if she was running.
Well, you know how we read all the comments that we get on our show. Currently, so the replay episode of Pierre Poilievre panics Prime Minister designate Mark Carney, which was, when was that broadcast? Yesterday, the day before? I'm not even sure. It was March 12th. Take a
look at that one.
2 days ago.
2 days ago.
So the replay has like 70 comments.
Has what?
70 comments.
Wow. So
I'm responding to a lot of them, and some of them are downright hilarious. This is the one that kills me. I got to read this to you, and I'll read my response as well, because I think they're both hilarious. And I think you'll find them the same thing. So the one quote, 15 hours ago, this person posted this. He says, "You Canadians really think Carney will stand up to Trump, in quotes? We are laughing down south. We love Canada, but your last 9-year leadership was terrible. And if you continue that, it will be difficult to see you as a partner. If your left wins," I don't even know what he's saying here. "If your left wins, see you within the EU. We welcome a tough and capable leader for Canada. That is Pierre." So my first response was a bunch of laughing emojis and said, "Thanks for the engagement. Remember to like, share, and subscribe." And then somebody said perfectly. And my final response, which I just finished typing out a moment ago, it says, "You elected a reality TV show host and convicted felon rapist twice. The same felon wants to annex my country. Do not expect us to be nice, polite Canadians. We will push back against any threat to our sovereign nation. Mark Carney will be sworn in today, March 14th, 2025. He is vastly more intelligent and more experienced in dealing with large problems. Trump won't see him coming.
Mm-hmm. Yep.
It's going to be an interesting day.
Oh, yeah. It's going to be an interesting day. It's going to be a very interesting day. So I thought, kits and cubs, that given the way things went down, and the Prime Minister didn't have a chance to have that great send-off, that before we start talking about Carney and the issues, a little bit of news that happened today, because there was that meeting between Dominic LeBlanc, François-Philippe Champagne, and Doug Ford from Team Canada, and Howard Nuttlick and friends. And Nuttlick was very, 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 very unhappy after the meeting. Didn't have a lot of nice things to say about Canada after the meeting. And there was a little press conference afterwards that might give an indication as to why that is. And it might have something to do with what Mark Carney said at the steel plant about first, we're going to agree on respect before we have some future conversations about a long-term solution. I love that. Mr. Grizzly just popped up. I'm guessing this is Theo Moudakis. Cartoon. It is Justin Trudeau, I guess, sort of I can't read what the caption is. It says right there.
The only Canadian who doesn't want Trudeau to go. Caption. And it's Justin Trudeau standing there looking like, oh, for Christ's sake. Well, Pierre Poilievre is grasping him around the ankles.
Sort of like as would like a 4-year-old child when you have to go to work and they don't want you to go.
Yes, that's exactly what it is.
Daddy,
it's been his raison d'etre for the last, 7 years?
Without you, who am I? Don't leave.
Literally.
I could hear, I hear Whitney Houston in the back. I got nothing if I don't have you.
Well, I want to thank her for the news for sending that to me. And she also sent this one. This one's pretty cool too, because it is Pie Day. So there we are. We're both having a slice.
Oh, yes. Yes. A slice of pie. I like that.
Having a slice, yeah. Well, you're having a slice, and I think I'm about to eat the whole pie, to be honest.
He's looking at me and says, I'll let you have one slice.
You have that slice.
I will watch you enjoy that slice, and the rest of the pie is mine. That's what that is. Mine. I love that. Oh my God. I love my hair too. I've got the screen on the side there, so I can because I'm set up and I got the two monitors again, so I can look at stuff. So there's like a 30-second delay based on where we are, or something based on what's on screen. So I just turned around and it's like, ooh, animated beaver is rocking some good hair today. Thanks, I like that. Thank you, Kit Uncover, for that.
I want to address something real quick before we get into the meat of the subject for today, because I think this is important for people to understand this. And we did touch on it, I think, lightly recently. It's about Columbia University student Mahmoud Khalil. He has a green card. He was arrested for protesting, and he's about to be deported despite not committing a crime in the United States of America. This is the first of many to come.
Maybe not even the first.
Well, the first.
Who knows?
The first that we know about of somebody being arrested for not committing a crime and about to be deported when they've done nothing wrong. This is the first one we know of. There's probably going to be more. Welcome to 1933 Germany. We told you this was going to happen. And it's happening. We told you this.
Yeah. We and yesterday, sort of like when we were talking about those stories, right? Because there's the requirement that every 30 days, if you are in the United States and you're not a citizen, that you register. And for a lot of people, there's going to be some fingerprinting and taking photos and, a whole lot of databasing and making a very detailed list of people that need to be monitored. Well, we know what happens when people start keeping those kinds of lists.
According to this, the ICE team claimed that he had fraudulently obtained a student visa card to attend Columbia University. When told that, in fact, he is a green card holder and therefore had no visa that could have been fraudulently obtained, they carted him away anyway. He's married to an American woman who was 8 months pregnant.
Yeah.
They're gonna deport a man who has every legal right, rhyme, and reason to be where he is. They just don't like what he had to say.
Yeah. And there's other things. There's a story of a 10-year-old girl who is getting who had just got brain cancer surgery or whatnot, and deported her with their family, even though she was still in hospital. And then the story that we brought to you yesterday, and that's why we're talking to you about that thing. This rule is not being very, 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 very publicized. So there are probably some Canadians or foreign nationals, because it applies to everyone there right now, who maybe don't even know that this has happened. I guess, and 30 days will pass. What will happen to them? Because they haven't registered. And there's a lot of people out there saying, like this, well, okay, that won't happen to me. I mean, the United States won't detain me for no reason at all, just for a mere visa issue. I mean, I'm white and I'm Canadian. Well, we showed yesterday that that's not the case. And in fact, they even violated her rights, because she should have had the right to say, well, okay, sorry, okay, well, if you're not going to let me in or detain me, if the visa thing you say is not all right, I'm just going to stay in Mexico and buy a plane ticket and head back to Canada that way. They did not allow her to do that. So if you are in the United States right now, or if you know somebody who's in the United States right now, please, please, please tell them that they need to do that, because when 30 days are up, there's going to be a whole bunch of people who didn't hear about this, who did not register, and they're going to be in for a world of trouble.
We don't know when she's going to be released.
They probably will not even be offered a chance to say, well, your visa's up, so you have 24 hours to get on a plane, or 48 hours to register. They've got on a plane to be back to Canada. Show us you got a plane ticket and bought it. Yes, they'll probably just take them. They've done it before already.
Oh, yes.
So, and what better way to put a little pressure on a nation during a trade negotiation than having a whole bunch of its snowbirds?
It's we're in a very strange, bizarre timeline. I don't even know. So, White House press secretary.
Yeah, I wouldn't even consider these things normally, but I have to rewire my brain to work. Like, what is the worst possible thing that I think could happen, and that
amplify
cube that, cube that, right? Like this, and then throw on a layer of super special cray or vindictive or whatever on there, like extra cruelty.
Well,
the guac is not extra on this one.
White House Press Secretary Carolyn Leavitt, I don't know how to pronounce her name, and I apologize if I butchered it. She is an idiot. She angrily accused Khalil of siding with Hamas terrorists who have killed innocent men, women, and children. That's in quote. She accused him of deliberately disrupting classes at Columbia, making Jewish American students feel unsafe. Jewish American students? I thought American... Anyway. And said he had disrupted pro-Hamas propaganda. He had distributed pro-Hamas propaganda flyers with the logo of Hamas. She claimed to have copies of the flyers in her possession, but opted not to share them with reporters in order to safeguard what she called the dignity of the White House briefing room. Oh, that's fucking rich. Along with more than 12 million other green card holders, Khalil is entitled to exactly the same legal protections as full American citizens, including, crucially in this case, the freedom of speech guarantees contained within the U.S. Constitution's First Amendment. Political speech is entirely protected in America, and whether they are demonstrators, activists, journalists, or purely private figures, permanent legal residents have, until now, enjoyed the same constitutional protections as U.S. citizens. Remember what Tommy Tuberville said yesterday? lock them up, throw them in jail. It is well underway, folks. Well underway. America is a fascist state run by a talking head reality show, 34-time convicted rapist felon. It is only going to get worse from here. Project 2025, that he said he knew nothing about, which is a crock, because everybody who wrote it used to be in his cabinet or were surrounded by him or had worked with him or were part of him. It's well underway, folks. Welcome to Gilead, because that is what the United States of America is. It is a fascist theocracy, and it is changing in front of our eyes by the second. It's just, I never thought I'd live to see something like this, and yet here we are. Here we are. It's just mind-numbing to me. I got to take a break. I need more coffee because I've only been up for a few minutes and I only had 2 hours sleep. So by all means, sir, please take it away and I'll be back in a minute.
Okay. All right. So as we were talking about, sorry, it's going to be a little odd segue from that because we were talking about thanking the Prime Minister for his service. And now we're going from Gilead to that. I don't know how to segue smoothly from that. So apologies for the clunkiness. So yes, today, because there's going to be the passing of the torch, of course, we're going to take some time looking at what the Prime Minister said at the convention. And he then released a very, very, very short little video yesterday, less than a minute, which is, a final message. And then we'll see what the future has for him. I would suppose he would want to take a long bit of time off and reconnect with his children and stuff before going on to his next adventure, I would assume. But hey, I assumed that of Carolyn Bennett when she stepped down. And I assumed that of Premier Dennis King when they stepped down, and they were soon off as ambassadors to Denmark and to Italy, respectively. So could very well be that the next phase is already written and that he's planning to, there's an appointment or a job for him lined up. But I would think, put it this way, he definitely deserves some time off. 10 years on a 24/7 job, well, 24/7 on-call job. You might want to take a month or two or 3 or a year or a decade, considering everything he had to do and all the stuff that he's been through. I'm surprised, considering all the stuff that has happened. Trump first time, Trump second time, and COVID, and then all the other stuff, that he doesn't look a whole lot older. Because normally these types of jobs really age you. He should look like Gollum based on everything he went through for the last 10 years. Or
how he's barely aged in that time frame is pretty miraculous. I guess it has to do with love. Having love in your heart.
Yeah. And the yoga.
Yeah.
Love and yoga.
Yeah.
I swear, God, this guy has got to be the most zen prime minister I know of, because they threw everything at him, and I don't think I've seen him once lose his temper in public. I've seen him be firm.
He did in the House of Commons once, but I've never seen him do it.
Okay.
In a public setting other than the House of Commons, when he walked across the floor and grabbed somebody and pulled her by the arm. You remember that?
Oh yeah.
He got accused of SA because he bumped into somebody. I'm like,
oh yeah, the elbow bump. Yes,
the elbow bump. That's sexual assault.
Elbowgate.
His elbow. He bumped into somebody with his elbow. It was not intentional. It happened, and you want to call that sexual assault because it happened to graze her breast.
Yeah. The worst thing was the grabbing of the other person's arm.
Yes,
technically,
that was worse. Technically, yes. I'm like, wow, you really are trying to split hairs here. I mean,
they are not happy unless they are miserable or complaining about something. That's the only conclusion I can come to. Mr. Grizz, I don't know if I had sent you something or not.
let me just check.
It's really weird. I kind of got lost in my thoughts, so I don't know if I actually completed the thought. And I actually, because I'm on the Mac now, I can't actually find the sent
I don't,
folder.
no, I don't see it, so I don't think you sent it.
No, I did not send it. Okay, that's cool. I thought I had, but I did not. So we're looking at a very, very specific career. Like every prime minister comes in a time and has something coming on, right? I mean, Prime Minister, the ones that I remember of my lifetime, Brian Mulroney, they had the first one, and then we had the free trade election, and then we had Jean Chrétien that came in, it's like, I mean, Mulroney, the progressive conservatives imploded in a most spectacular way. They went from 2 consecutive majority governments, the second one actually being the actual majority where they got 50% of the vote, to 2 seats. And then politics splintered. We had the Reform Party pop up, and we had the Bloc Québécois pop up. And politics as we know it now-ish sort of started around that time in the 90s. Then we had Chrétien and Martin, where they had their whole thing was the fact that they had to get the economy back on track. Because as Chrétien reminded us in the speech, we didn't show you that section, but when he was prime minister, 35 cents of every tax dollar was going to paying the servicing of the debt. Currently, it's 11.
Yes.
11. Even after COVID, even after the hyperinflation, it's 11. So, again, when the conservatives are telling you, like, oh my God, we're going to hell in a handbasket, it's like we are not even anywhere near where we were in 1995. Nowhere near. So, I mean, we need to pump the brakes on the doom and gloom and everything's broken thing.
Mm-hmm.
It's not. Okay.
It's not.
And that's as well after a decade of Harper, who wasn't very good at balancing the budget. Right? Mulroney and Harper both left us a lot of debt until COVID combined. Both of them were the two that left us the most. Well, maybe not most, but combined, they left us a hell lot of debt. In my lifetime, Mulroney left us dead. Liberals balanced the budget and got surpluses 8 or something years in a row. Yes, and then Harper had more debt.
Yes.
Like this, which you can give him a bit of a pass on because there was an economic crisis. But unlike this government, who got us out of a way worse economic crisis, actually managing the soft landing, this guy decided he needed to cut stuff faster, thus prompting a second, very short but mini recession.
Now, we do need to look a little bit closer at the balanced budget that was handed to Harper. I cannot stand him, and I think he did irreparable harm to our country.
Mm-hmm.
But the way that budget was balanced was they handed a lot of things down to the provinces.
Oh,
so
yeah.
There was a shell game there, right? It was,
absolutely.
So we can't hail
True
as being this great, because of how what I'm like, facts and fairness and truth is what we do on this show. And as much as I hate Harper, yes, he was handed a balanced budget. However, the way they balanced the budget was a shell game. They did hand things down to the provinces. So it was not exactly the thing that a lot of people like to say it is.
I'm going to push back a little bit on that because yes, there was some transfers to the provinces, absolutely. I guess and put the provinces in a bad state.
Yes.
Right. Absolutely. Yes. But by doing those things, we saw many years later with COVID, the federal government had the margin to take on all the costs for the provinces of keeping everybody whole.
Mm-hmm.
Because in normal times, you would have expected every province to do that through their welfare program or something. Keep people, I guess, but we use the national EI program.
Correct.
I guess, and then the federal government borrowed and borrowed and borrowed to keep the provinces, and borrowed and borrowed and borrowed to keep all of us whole because the federal government knew that it could borrow at a much lower rate than we do. Had a AAA rating behind it, so it had preferential payback terms, and because they're a federal government, infinite time to spread it out, to amortize the pain. Unlike us, who would not have had that ability. So there are trade-offs at that time, yes, and provinces are still dealing with that, right? Our subnational debt is pretty big here in Canada compared to our national debt. Yes. But having cleaned up our national debt does allow us to come and give a hand when needed. And, we could probably borrow against it and fill the thing that probably wasn't done as well after as then when we got out of that situation. Well, was to fill the hole that we had created. And again, to give Chrétien Martin credit, their policy, once we got back after making that cut, was any surplus, 1/3 went to tax cuts, 1/3 went to new programming, so filling that hole, right? And then 1/3 went to debt repayment. So like this, which would free more money to then be able to put in those programs every year that you made debt payment. And then Harper came and blew all that up by offering a GST tax cut, 2%.
Yes.
Just blew the surplus.
Done. Gone
Done.
in an instant.
Yep. And I don't know if anybody of you, all those years, 2 cents on the dollar, unless you took all those 2 cents and put them away somewhere, maybe you were able to afford a trip at some point. But since nobody does that, how much real tangible, what were you able to do with that money, right? Getting 2 cents every time you spend $1 here is not the same as somebody giving you $2,500.
Correct.
At one point you can do something, right? Drip, 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 drip. So how useful that really was. Yeah.
It's a question.
But then we had the Harper era, right? And they did have that economic crash and they did have to get through it. They didn't do great like this, but they did okay. But they didn't do great. And they certainly pretend that they didn't see it coming. Which again, to this day, I will not believe because my financial advisor told me to get out of everything U.S. about in June of that year, and then the crash happened in September. And the reason that's BS is because finance ministers get 3-month rolling numbers and get projections and whatnot. So they saw the inflection happen about 3 months, which is why they called the election for early September. And then they got the majority. And then a couple of weeks later, the crash happened. And then you'll remember Jim Flaherty, who the Conservatives right now are saying that Mark Carney is trying to steal valor and credit from. You'll remember that Jim Flaherty stood up in the House of Commons and gave his fall economic statement and said, hey, the only thing that we need to do to help the economy is offer this type of tax cut and cut the per vote subsidy for all the parties. And we'll be fine.
Yeah, totally fine.
And then a couple of weeks later, we're not going to be fine. Actually, there's actually going to be a deficit of $35 billion. And then a couple of weeks later, actually, it's going to be probably closer to 50. And we didn't see this coming.
Yeah.
Again, if you believe that, I have some beautiful real estate on the North Shore of Saskatchewan.
Yes. Oceanfront property.
Oh, yes, you just eagles flying.
Oh, hang on a sec. Breaking news.
Oh.
Former McDonald's employee opens a car dealership. Oh, come on. That was funny.
Broke the beaver.
Well, what I find very funny about this, somebody said to me yesterday, wait a minute. So the Republican president who, extreme right wing, blah, 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 Gilead. Yeah. She goes, he is now trying to get his supporters to buy electric cars.
He just raised the cost of with steel and aluminum tariffs.
But aren't electric cars for liberal left-wing cuck soy boys?
And he doesn't drive. And he couldn't drive. And he couldn't drive even if he did drive because
he doesn't know how.
Well, no, but if he knew how, he still couldn't.
Well,
he's the president. He could drive around there.
Yes, around.
He could drive around the building.
Biden did that in a Jeep, drove around the White House lawn.
Yeah,
that's the only thing you're allowed to drive, and the only place you're allowed to drive is there. Yes.
Yeah, the Queen does that too. Well, the Queen did that too around Buckingham Palace. It's like, I need to drive.
Yes, I just need to. Yeah. He doesn't know how to drive. He's never driven a vehicle in his life.
Oh God. Jeez.
But I mean, it's like the irony of that. This you know,
Yeah.
the guys who like to roll coal and do all that shit. Now he's urging them to buy an electric car. Oh, do you know why? Elon gave him $100 million the other day.
God.
Yeah.
All right. Okay, enough about the Americans for now.
Sorry, I had to. I needed to inject a little humor in there because, and I'm only running on barely 2 hours sleep. So
that's okay.
I'm all over the map.
So we get past the Harper era. And I distinctly remember Rona Ambrose joking, "The bad man is gone." It was funny because it was true. But he didn't fully leave now, did he? Damn. Anyway, then we get the Trudeau years. Right? And comes in sunny ways. A lot of people turn around and go, "What happened to the sunny ways?" Well, we had a pandemic.
Mm-hmm.
One. Right? Then we got Trump. So we had about one good year with Obama. And then somebody decided to shoot a plane out of the air. I think that was Iran.
Yeah.
Which Harper left us a beautiful mess there, having no diplomatic relations with Iran, so we couldn't really do anything to advocate for the Canadians and permanent residents in Canada. We had to rely on other nations. Thank you, conservatives, for that.
Mm-hmm.
They got a one-day press story making a statement. We walked out on Iran and then hobbled our ability to negotiate or advocate ever since. Because you always stay diplomatically. Unless something is like absolutely horrendous, you stay because you always need to maintain that line of connection. And then there was the Wet'suwet'en.
Yes.
Blockade that happened right after that. And then, so all of a sudden it just became plane out, and we were thinking, okay, plane falling out of the air, falling out of the air, being shot out of the air.
Shot out of the
sky. Indigenous Canadians making a rightful statement, but yes, that is causing some disruption, getting the attention of the federal government, and then the other stuff started to happen.
All of the
COVID
stuff.
and the Trump and then I guess so. Those again. There wasn't a lot of time for sunshine, unfortunately. Despite that, right? Yes, probably more of a socially progressive tenure, probably the most socially progressive prime minister we've had, probably in history. There might have been some that were more back in their times. For their time, I'm sure that when they brought in national Medicare at the time, that seemed extremely socially progressive because, well, doctors were very much against it at that time. But and very transformative, of course. We've mentioned on the show all throughout the years different things that he's touched upon, bringing back the census and lifting the kids and families out of poverty.
Correct.
And making made a thing, legalization of marijuana, inclusion of transgender Canadians as charter protected. On the basis of gender identity. And of course, they were charter protected as humans before, but on that specific basis.
I was sent an article yesterday. This has to do with it directly deals with the PM, and I just sort of went, this can't be. It's from the Western Standard, saying that the Prime Minister spent $11 billion on gender reassignment surgery for foreigners. I'm like, 11 billion? 11 billion. Hey, look, maybe 11 million, but 11 billion? We would notice that. Yeah. And Pierre Poilievre would be all over the news with that, screaming.
Everybody would be over the news with that. Everybody. That's a big number. Well, first of all, the news would be that there are that many transgender people.
11
Wait a
billion?
minute, transgender people are more than 0.4% of the population?
11 billion? I'm like, sorry. The person who sent me that, I just said, this is from the Western Standard. Their reporting is dubious at best, and I'm being polite.
I mean, the surgeries aren't cheap, but I mean,
come on. 11 billion?
The lie was too big, buddy. Too big.
That would be front page headline news.
Yeah.
Everywhere.
11 billion.
And the only one who ran that story was the Western Standard. You're telling me that Post Media, the American-owned right-wing conglomerate, wouldn't have plastered that everywhere? Sorry. Cite your sources, because I don't believe it for a split second.
Oh, no. Come on. That's just ridiculous.
I don't believe it. It's 11 billion? Come on. We would notice that.
Yeah, we would.
We would notice that. I mean, how much does gender reassignment surgery cost? I don't know. But if they spent 11 billion, let's say it costs $1 million per person. And that seems incredibly outrageous in Canada. Let's say it costs that much. 11 billion.
Mm-hmm.
So apparently everybody on Earth,
well, technically,
yes. Yeah.
Technically, I mean, given that executive order.
Yes, assigned at birth.
Yes.
Gender assigned at conception, sorry. Gender assigned at conception. So I'm a trans man, as are you. Apparently.
Yes. Madam President Trump told us so.
Yes. Yeah. And then when folks get mad at me for saying that, I'm like, this is scientifically proven. It was proven in 1973. This is not some new right-wing or left-wing conspiracy. It's real. This is a real thing.
Yes.
It's real science.
Indeed. All right. So I think now it is there for you, Mr. Grizzly. So we will show the Prime Minister here first, talking to members of the Liberal Party when he was making his final speech after being introduced by his daughter, Ella Grace, who did an amazing job, as we showed you already. And this is what he had to say on the last night.
All right, this is the daughter of Justin Trudeau. She is, I believe, 16 years old.
I think you might have to fast forward a bit because I think they have her first.
Dad.
Oh yeah, sorry.
On this clip,
Apologies.
yeah.
I didn't realize that.
Okay, that was Ella Grace Trudeau, very put together 16-year-old. I would not have been able to give that kind of speech at that age. And here's Justin Trudeau on what is undoubtedly an emotional moment for him. We will listen in and talk about it.
Mes amis, bonsoir tout le monde. Hello, my friends. You know, as I look out across this room, I have just one question. How's the Liberal Party doing tonight?
Ella Grace, I know that these last few years haven't been easy for Sav. Hey, Adrienne, yourself. Thank you for having been so patient with me, even when I was stressed, when I was traveling too much, when I couldn't think about anything other than work. But please know that in the most difficult times, you inspired me. You gave me courage. You reminded me that I should focus on what was really important and not what was just urgent. Being Prime Minister of this country has been the honor of my life, but I'm so looking forward to redevoting myself to my most important role, that of father. I'm proud of the three of you, and I love you above all.
Gotta love that.
Now, sit down. Now, I can imagine that you're all expecting me to stand up and talk about all that we've accomplished together. And don't get me wrong, I am damn proud of what we've done over these past 10 years for the middle class and people working hard to join it. But tonight is about our future as a party, as a country. Now, I know that we as Liberals, as a government, often get criticized by our friends for not taking a victory lap after we get something big done. We do something really big, and then we move on right away to the next challenge. Because as progressives, as Liberals, we know there is always more to do. So it is important to take the time to reflect on and share the big successes. But not tonight. Not tonight, because when Liberals gather, we're always focused on just one thing: the work that still needs to be done to build a country that stays worthy of all Canadians. And simply put, that's the work of a lifetime for each and every one of us. It's very simple. Liberals are dedicated to making this country even better, not because we think it's broken, but because we have an opportunity and therefore a responsibility to ensure that Canada stays the best country on earth. Now, these past 10 years have been challenging. Crisis after crisis has been thrown at Canadians. But through every crisis, Canadians have shown who they are. We've pulled together, we've stood up for each other, and every single time we've emerged even stronger. And now, as Canadians face from our neighbor an existential challenge, an economic crisis, Canadians are showing exactly what we are made of. Canadians are showing what it is that makes us Canadians, not by defining ourselves by who we're not, but by proudly embracing who we are.
Okay, let's take a little stop there.
We're a country.
That little bit of note is really important because you'll remember when all of this started, when the Prime Minister went on to U.S. television, he said, well, one of the ways that Canadians define themselves is say we're not American.
Mm-hmm.
Well, over the past couple of weeks, that's evolved now, hasn't it?
Yes, very much so.
Mm-hmm. Let's keep going. I just wanted to note that because there was a change in verbiage there. And it's like, if you didn't notice that, or if you missed the first one, it's like, oh, yeah, okay.
Country that knows that standing up for everyone's fundamental rights is the only way to protect our freedom. We're a country that believes no one should be left behind and that everyone should have a real and fair shot at success. We're a country that refuses to accept the false choice between a strong economy and a healthy environment. We're a country that embraces reconciliation and Indigenous peoples as true partners because it is the only path to a shared, prosperous future.
We are a country that promotes its culture and protects its heritage. We're a country that breathes life into the French language and is heard across the world. We're a country that celebrates its diversity and draws strength from its differences.
We're a country that celebrates the right of each and every person to be who they want to be, to pray as they pray, and love whom they love. We're a country that will always defend a woman's right to choose. And we're a country that will be diplomatic when we can, but fight when we must, elbows up. But you here in this room, and our fellow Liberals watching across the country, you know all about fighting with grit, with determination, when the going gets tough. You remember where we were 15 years ago with just 35 seats in the House. You remember our ups and downs and all those times that people counted us out, all the times they said our party was on its last breath. Like all Canadians, it's when you try to count us out that we Liberals show our true mettle.
You showed this in 2015, 2019, and again in 2021. You mobilized. You knocked on doors. You did it in the rain, in a heat wave, in the freezing cold. You did it in the middle of a pandemic, wearing a mask. You fought for your country, and you changed it for the better. You know, a party is more than just a name, a logo, a leader. It's all about you. You who carry the hopes of Canadians day in, day out. A country is more than a flag and a territory. It's a vision which is built gradually, day after day, between friends and neighbours. And I'd like to thank all those who have been there to build this vision together. I'm thinking here about my first volunteers 18 years ago, those who have been there since the start. Rennes, Louis-Alexandre, Stavroula, and others, so many others. I'm thinking about the grocery store parking lot in Papineau, when we talk to people to rally them to our cause, to our movement.
Tonight I'm also thinking of two friends in particular who've been there with me and for me every step of the way for close to 20 years. The extraordinary Adam Scotty and the unstoppable Katie Telford. Now, as I look at all of you in this room, no speech could be enough to thank you all as much as I'd like to, as much as you should be. I can't even offer you a well-deserved break because, once again, we need you. Your country needs you maybe more than ever. And I have no doubt that you will answer the call because you've done it before. Liberals will meet this moment. And make no mistake, this is a nation-defining moment. Democracy is not a given. Freedom is not a given. Even Canada is not a given. None of those happen by accident. None of them will continue without effort. It takes courage. It takes sacrifice. It takes hope and hard work. 60 years ago, standing atop Parliament Hill, Prime Minister Lester B. Pearson first raised our beautiful maple leaf into the Canadian sky. It was much debated at the time, but Pearson knew well what we all know now, that our flag would serve as a unifying symbol that would define the next chapters in our national story. 60 years later, there are still so many more chapters to write. And I can tell you, the world is looking to see what Canadians will do. So let us not dwell on all the great things we've achieved over the past 10 years. Let us aspire instead to achieve even more over the next 10 years and the decades to come. Let us remain steadfast, defiant, and united. And let us not just think about our party, let us prove our love of country. As your leader, as your Prime Minister, I have done my level best each and every single day to help build a country that stays worthy of all Canadians. I've done it for Xavier, for Ella Grace and Hadrian. And I've done it for your kids too. And I've done it with you. And although you'll always find me alongside you, cheering along, their future and your future is now in your hands. Merci, mes amis. Merci pour tout.
So, figured I'd let that run for the most part uninterrupted. Respect.
Well, I mean, it's his farewell speech. Did you know the last thing he signed? The last thing he did while in office? Last thing he taped out? Effective, I don't know if it's immediately, but very, very soon, he changed the banking regulations for the better of Canadians, because banks have been taking advantage of Canadians for about 50 years, doing something that is rather nefarious. And he has changed the rules. NSF fees are now capped at $10, and they can't give you two in two in a 2-day span or something like that. I read about it yesterday. Yep. And also, banks have to report all NSF fees collected and how much money they made. And it's he really slapped them hard on this one. Look, it has long been known, and there's been stories. I think there was a story about 10 or 15 years ago in W5, or it might have been 60 Minutes. I can't recall exactly, that banks intentionally NSF checks all the time. So let's say, for example, if you get paid every second Friday or every second Thursday, and on that day, you also have your mortgage payment and your car payment coming out of your account, but you've run a little dry because, things are a little patchy. What they would do is, even though your paycheck has been deposited into that account at midnight the night before, they will hold it to the end of business day and NSF your mortgage payment and your car payment and charge you $100 in NSF fees and then clear your check. Banks have been doing this for decades. It's a huge profit margin for them. I'm not making this up. This has been reported. There was a television program. It was either 60 Minutes or W5. I don't recall. But it happens on both sides of the border. It's been decades that banks have been doing this. So, yeah, he changed the rules so that banks can charge no more than $10. And you're right.
Darn good.
And this Saucy Sea Witch says it right here. The new laws for banks are great news. NSF fees were hurting people, and banks were cleaning house. And it's true. It's long been a thing of banks who know. And I remember reading a story years ago about somebody who was a federal government employee who had something come up in his life and he had to drain one of his accounts to take care of a bill. And of course, he's been a federal government employee for 30 years. So the bank knows when he gets paid. And they did exactly what I said. They bounced his mortgage payment, they bounced his car payment, they bounced his insurance payment, all on the day he got paid. So he wrote a long letter. It was published, I think, in the newspaper, if memory serves, and then closed all of his accounts, and then had all of his family members do the same. They all moved to a different bank. He says, this is how you treat somebody? I've been with you for 45 years. I've been employed by the federal government for 30 years. And you NSF so you could make a few extra bucks off me. Well, you get no more of my money. And he left. I know a number of people who have done that. Matter of fact, a friend, his father who ran an insurance company in Smiths Falls, the bank pulled a stunt like that on him. Not only did his entire family close their account with the bank, he pulled all of his business accounts as well and moved across the street to their competitor. And he says, no, there's no apology. There's nothing you can do to make this up to me. We are finished forever. And his insurance company put millions of dollars through that small town bank, who lost it all because they got greedy. So this $10 NSF fee, I welcome it. I welcome it. $10 is the cap that they can put on it. I was like, this is good news, friends. This is good news. And Saucy just put it in the chat there. If you see it, I don't know if you can see it or not. It's in the chat now. So
all right.
I will click on the link and let me see where the link is. She put it in the link. Put it in the chat, so I'll pull it up and have a look.
All right. And this is, by the way, that you mentioned, it's something that was announced actually back in 2023.
Correct.
In 2023, I have a news release here. It was a certain amount of measures that the government was taking to ensure that Canadians were treated fairly by their banks. The first was to protect Canadians from rising mortgage payments. It was to direct banks to work proactively with mortgage holders at risk of default on their principal residence to provide tailored mortgage relief. The second one was to make banking more affordable for Canadians by ensuring that there are more low cost and no cost account options from Canada's banks, so that you can actually have a bank account where you don't have to pay like a ridiculous fee every month.
Exactly.
And the fourth measure announced was find ways to support Canadians who believe that they had been treated unfairly by their bank by designating an independent and transparent not-for-profit organization and called the Ombudsman for Banking Services and Investments, which would be a single external complaints body for Canada's banking sector. So they established that. And in that mix, the third thing was the government is making progress in cracking down on junk fees, starting with NSF fees charged by banks, which particularly impact low-income Canadians.
This is the thing. Those of us who struggle to get by always pay the highest price. Because we can't fight back.
Says the Deputy Prime Minister, that was Chrystia Freeland at the time, has issued direction to lower NSF fees, and update on this work and further actions to crack down on junk fees will be announced. Yes. And now I guess they weren't maybe doing as well as the Prime Minister wanted, so left them with a little parting gift.
I think it's a pretty damn good one, to be honest with you.
I think, when we're talking affordability, why not? And that's like I said, a good little piece of news to leave people with as you're passing the torch. Hopefully it will get enough play, because that would so that people know about it. But yeah, very good. I like that. All right. So we have the Prime Minister not taking a lot of time to talk about successes, making the point that
why gloat?
Well, no, not why gloat as well, but it's a criticism of liberals and Democrats, and and all over. It's like, you do something well. It's like, a conservative politician will put the toast in the toaster right like this, and like hold a big celebration, put signs, and put memes. Look what I did, and like this. Whereas, Democrats said, okay, I made great. I successfully made toast. Now let's pack your lunch, and then let's get you to school, and then let's make sure that you learn well, and then let's make sure the house is clean, and then let's make sure we just move on to the next thing.
Mm-hmm.
Because as the Prime Minister said, there's always work that needs to be done. So great, we did that. Okay, now what? As opposed to, hey, we did that.
Well, and this comment from Mr. Shaw, I don't want to mispronounce your first name, sir. It's Ibad. I don't know if it's Abad or Ibad. I don't want to mispronounce it. So, Mr. Shaw, he's like, the guy made sure he served the people. And what are conservatives doing? Increasing ads against Mark Carney. Mark Carney. It explains an awful lot. You are correct, sir. It explains an awful lot.
Yep. Just saw a comment in the chat going by someone who I don't think is a regular viewer. Mentioned polls change every day. Well, that's the whole thing. Polls do change every day. They measure how you feel at a certain point in time. Once time changes, how you feel can change. I mean, the fact that polls changes every day, as they are designed and supposed to do, if you do a poll every day, does not mean that the value of what the poll is saying, what the overall trend is saying, is invalid. It's just what polls do. But that's not a counter argument. It's not an argument.
No.
It's merely a statement of fact.
Well, and the funny thing is, the last few years we've been with the lead that the Conservatives have had in the polls. People go, look at the polls, look at the polls, look at the polls. Now it's like they change every day.
Yep. And the entire time we saw that, we never said these polls are wrong.
No, we never argued. All I said was, I don't give a damn about polls. I've been saying that for years. I will continue to say that. I'm not a fan of them. You know that.
I do, and I am.
Yeah.
But again, I had the benefit, right, when I did my university studies in communications, of taking some courses in quantitative and qualitative analysis.
Mm-hmm.
So I've developed an appreciation for them because I know what they are and what they are not, right? Which is why when I interpret them, when I bring them to you, I let you know. And I'm very rarely wrong. Like when I said a couple of weeks ago, you could look at these things. I've been telling our audience for a while. It's like, those polls are there, but in an election period, as you get closer to election, there's a kicking the tires period, and then there's a part where the band narrows naturally, and then in this case, there was an opportunity for a earth-shattering change, not getting a President Kamala Harris or Joe Biden at the time. Again, a renewal, a second term. Right? We all knew that Trump was running again, and we all knew that Trump could win.
Mm-hmm.
So
we'd actually said, if memory serves, I said he's probably going to win.
Probably, at some point,
I said he's probably going to win, and it's disturbing, but there you have it.
Yeah. So I mean, and that's why. Yes, sometimes we bring you individual numbers like this, but we tend to deal more with the aggregates. We bring you individual numbers. Like around these times, we're going to bring you more individual numbers just because they're coming in fast and furious. And we have an overall narrative of everything moving in one direction at this moment. Should there be a stop to that, right? We'll bring you that. But right now, I mean, again, unless you're going to do deny the obvious evidence that your eyes are showing you when you look at them. I mean, it's a hockey stick.
Mm-hmm.
The Canadian numbers, the Liberal numbers, are like a hockey stick, and it's been sustained over 8 or 9 weeks. I mean, there is something happening, right? There's no doubt, and then you can just tell by the general behavior of people around. We keep on telling you on the show, look for new behavior. We're seeing a whole lot of new behavior from the Conservatives. Just saying. New behavior doesn't happen for no reason. Something prompts it. So, I guess I don't have access to their internal numbers, polling numbers.
Mm-hmm.
I only have access to the big broad ones. I know they're not as good and perfect as the internal ones. But if there's internal polling coming in and people suddenly are changing their behavior, and the way that their behavior is changing is not more quiet, calm confidence, but a little more, my deductive reasoning skills lead me to believe that those polling numbers are probably not great.
Well,
Again, I don't have access to them.
According to a study by the Angus Reid Institute, Liberal leadership candidate, well, he actually is the Liberal leader, he's the Prime Minister as effective today, he leads Pierre Poilievre in net favorability by 28 points.
Yep. Well,
unfavorability of Poilievre is now at an all-time high. And again, this is Carney leads Poilievre in net favorability by 44 points among women and 43 points among Canadians aged 18 to 34 years age.
Right.
34 years old. So it's, I mean,
yep. Well, he's the only one actively speaking about doing something for young Canadians.
Correct. Yes.
Right. Pierre Poilievre is doing all the young Canadians can't afford homes. Like, yes, but
what are you going to do about it?
$150,000 GST cut on a home that already costs $500,000 to $1 million or more is not going to help a 25-year-old.
Nope. No, not at all.
Sorry,
not the least bit.
Unless he's getting some help from the International Bank of Mom and Dad.
Yeah, well, and that's the only way.
Only way, but other that's not helping. That's not helping. So again, great speech for the Prime Minister, prompts, but in this speech, right, it's not a victory lap. He's still working.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Till the last possible second, he is working, he is rallying, he is laying the road ahead, he is bringing clarity. And he is pumping us. You can do it. He's boosting our confidence. He's telling us that we are capable, that we can come out of the other end of this. With some difficulty, with some struggle, with all that like this, but we can come out of the other end of this in a manner that is both good and a manner in which we can be proud. Doing the right thing the right way. So, what can you say? I thought it was an interesting twist on a departure speech, but I really liked the way he did it, how he presented himself, and what it is that he had to say. Now, as we are saying goodbye to the Prime Minister, there are two articles I'd like to read. One we've talked about, but I don't think we read it in, because when we're talking about the Prime Minister's legacy. The first one was with regard to Indigenous people. Because as we've stated on the show, and I think it's pretty much an undeniable fact, there is probably no Prime Minister in Canadian history might be able to take all of them and put them all together. I mean, all of them. Since the beginning. Who's actually devoted care and attention to Indigenous people. I should say, Karen, I'm sure back in the day, they were spinning it as care and attention when they were spending so much money. They were certainly giving them a lot of attention when they were spending a lot of money with residential schools to try to beat the Indian out of the child. But not all attention is good. So we're talking about actual care and actual attention. And this is from the Saskatoon Star Phoenix. Someone named Doug Cuthand wrote this, and I will go to the bottom to see if there's a little bit of a description because sometimes they have that. Yes, Doug Cuthand is the Indigenous Affairs columnist for the Saskatoon Star Phoenix and Regina Leader Post. He's a member of the Little Pine First Nation. So that's why I was wondering about the source here. Justin Trudeau was best Prime Minister for Indigenous people, is the headline. This appeared on January 11th. The resignation of Prime Minister Justin Trudeau has been met with relief and gloating from much of the Canadian public, but in Indian country, his resignation has been a cause for reflection and regret. Simply put, Justin Trudeau was the best Prime Minister we ever had. He made the relationship with First Nations his priority and established a nation-to-nation relationship with us. This relationship had been a long-standing request from the First Nations and recognizes our special relationship with the Crown and Canada through our treaties and our specific place within the Canadian Constitution. Under his direction, the federal government instituted the policy of reconciliation and worked to implement the calls to action of the Truth and Reconciliation Commission. Reconciliation became a process that was adopted by corporations, provinces, and individuals. His leadership has been a period of increased awareness and understanding of Indigenous issues, which has raised our profile to the point where I doubt that any new incoming government can ignore us. Trudeau also recognized the United Nations Declaration on the Rights of the Indigenous Peoples, which Stephen Harper's government had refused to recognize, along with the United States and Australia. The recognition of our rights under international law was in keeping with our treaties and our Aboriginal title as the original inhabitants of this land. Detractors maintain that it gives the First Nations a veto over resource development, but it really means that as the original inhabitants of this land, we have the right to be included in both the conversation and the decisions. In other words, we are now partners in major economic decisions. Under the Harper government, Indigenous budgets were frozen at the annual rate of inflation in spite of the fact that we have the fastest growing population of any group in the country. The result was that our education system and social safety net fell further and further behind the mainstream. Those are actually cuts. When you give funding that increases at the rate of inflation, but population is growing faster than everybody else, the amount of money per capita decreases. It's a cut. It's a cut. When the Trudeau government came to office, the freeze was lifted and more equitable finances became available. The redneck trolls on social media refer to increased funding as, quote, the gravy train. But when has equitable funding meant anything more than fairness? The previous government had refused to implement an inquiry into missing and murdered Indigenous women, though the facts were undeniable. Trudeau made the inquiry a campaign promise and saw it carried out, and numerous recommendations emerged. I had forgotten about that. Going through the list of accomplishments, I had forgotten that he actually did quality inquiry. One of the findings was that the murder of Indigenous women and girls was an act of genocide, that society saw Indigenous women as expendable and held their lives as cheap. This remains a serious stain on Canada's international reputation and cannot be ignored by any future government, and I would say even less so now that Rob Canoe did what he did. Hopefully, that means never more will any Canadian, no exceptions, be disposed of in that manner. And public officials will say, I'm sorry, but that person you loved is trash. We will not go look for them. We look for everyone. No exceptions. If we're not doing that, something's wrong. When Trudeau worked to change the relationship with First Nations, it was not a job he could do alone. His good intentions were ignored by the Indigenous Services Department, aka the Department of Indian Affairs, aka the Colonial Office. They continued to develop financing agreements that reduced the chief and council's rightful place and created the equivalent of federal municipalities. Provincial governments, including Saskatchewan's, provide minimum resources for the homeless and Indigenous persons living off the reserves. They continue to ignore our land rights and sell off Crown land where we should have the first right of refusal. It was obvious in the last election that the Saskatchewan Party wrote off the Indigenous vote and concentrated on their rural base. The next federal government, be it Liberal or Conservative, must continue to address the important issues on the Indigenous agenda. The recent rejection of the childcare agreement and the reform package by the First Nations chiefs must be revisited and ratified before there's change of government. It's doubtful a Conservative government will offer the same terms. Justin Trudeau took First Nations relationships a long way during his tenure in office. He accomplished many firsts, and future governments will find his progress hard to ignore. We have come a long way, and we're not prepared to go backwards. So that was this first retrospective from a community. The other one is one I stumbled upon yesterday, and I am going to read, and I'm going to admit I'm doing it because I am biased. Because it's about my community,
There you go. No
the
worries.
rainbow one. So all cards on the table. This choice of selection is 100% total bias.
That's fine.
Okay. It's by Dale Smith, a journalist's I, and I think you too, Mr. Grizzly, very much appreciate,
Yes.
based on past comments. I sent him a little note saying, if you want to come on the show, by the way, you're more than welcome. This, and here's the thing. I believe, if I'm not mistaken, that Dale Smith is an out journalist.
I don't know. I don't know.
I don't know for sure, but I believe this appeared in Extra. Not because a journalist has a piece that appears in Extra doesn't mean that they're a rainbow. I believe, I do not know.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. But I am reading this as someone who believes that this comes from a perspective of someone that is within the community. And you would normally think, right, this is going to be elogious and praiseworthy and whatnot, and there is some of that. But I'm reading this because this is actually a very solid and fair analysis that has both criticism and compliments. On August 4th, 2015, then third-party leader Justin Trudeau was flying to Vancouver to attend the Pride Parade when Stephen Harper surprised everyone and called the election early, opting for an 11-week campaign in the hopes of blunting pre-election advertising over the summer and exhausting his opponents with such a long campaign. The other reason to do that is that he thought if the Prime Minister wasn't in Ottawa, he would be able to have a good launch. That didn't really work out for Steve. Trudeau decided that he had committed to being at Vancouver Pride, and that's how he was going to kick off his campaign. In a way, it set the stage for his time in office, where he made big promises to minority communities, including LGBTQ2S+ communities, but his record on following through is decidedly mixed. As he resigns as Prime Minister and turns over the reins to Mark Carney, we can say that Trudeau did have an overall positive effect on the lives of LGBTQ2S+ people in Canada, particularly with pushing forward the recognition of gender identity and gender expression laws to protect trans and gender non-conforming people. Nevertheless, because this was a government that couldn't communicate its way out of a wet paper bag, the rights-affirming legislation also saw the rise of Jordan Peterson, who claimed that he could be jailed for misgendering someone, and became a folk hero of the far right as a result. All of that could have been avoided if the government had had a better grasp on how to effectively rebut his nonsense, rather than turning him into a faux martyr and purveyor of grievances. I have to push back a little on that.
Mm-hmm.
I do believe, yes, the communication problem did exist, and I do believe it would have been helpful if they had been able to do that. But I also believe that that other side of the political spectrum is just going to do what they're going to do regardless.
Period.
So
yeah.
You could have Einstein come and explain it like they are 5 years old. They will still find a way to misunderstand it, because the goal, as Nate Pike told, is not to have a good faith conversation or debate.
Exactly.
Right. So, I'd push back a little, but regardless of it being effective or not, it would have been helpful. Whether it would have been effective in stopping them from doing what they were going to do anyway or not, it would have been helpful, and it might have helped them not be able to gain as many followers, because maybe people in the public would have had their intellectual and emotional defenses against that type of faux martyrdom and grievance purveying. Trudeau's government did put money towards the queer and trans communities with project funding and the 2S LGBTQI+ action plan, which helped community organizations and pride committees build capacity in order to better offer longer-term stability and programming for their communities. And it was flexible enough that when the need arose to make security a higher priority, as protests began causing problems for pride festivals around the country, the government was able to help with that as well. Trudeau's government was able to get a bill banning so-called conversion therapy across the country passed unanimously, thanks to a bit of clever maneuvering, as the Conservative leadership at the time wanted the matter dealt with so that it couldn't be used as a bludgeon against them. And the Prime Minister managed to time that at the same time as Garnet Genuis was off having a little visit in Latvia, accompanied by another Conservative MP who happens to vote with the rainbow community.
Mm.
So it seems Aaron O'Toole made sure that Mr. Genuous was away on a vacation. Not a vacation, a business trip. He was there inspecting Canada's military program, what we're doing in Latvia over there. So, and I guess when he heard that the vote was going to happen the next day, he wasn't able to get a plane to get back in time. It would have been very embarrassing for the Conservatives to have one person stand up and say, yeah, pro-conversion therapy, let's keep that going for a little bit longer. Let's keep torturing people legal for a little bit longer. Would have championed the Conservative. Garnet Genuous. Yeah. So that was the petty in me really liked that move. If you were watching the show when we were reporting on that. There was good work in ensuring that queer and trans refugees had a faster way to Canada thanks to a partnership with Rainbow Railroad, an organization that we very much support, which was a good solution by the government to ensure that they could forge links with civil society groups to do more good in the world. Trudeau also deserves praise for having the queerest cabinet in Canadian history. And when the opportunity arose, all of those queer ministers got promotions and added responsibilities. Unfortunately, most of them are not running again on the next election.
Mm.
But as opposed to many places, openly gay and queer people were given positions of authority. And when they did well, they were given promotions.
Mm-hmm.
Almost like the being gay thing didn't matter.
Wow. Had nothing to do with qualifications for the job, right? Go figure.
And didn't make them instantly or magically worse at their job. It's like, gee, when it comes to welding things, I don't think your gayness will help you do it as fast as everybody else.
Yeah, that really makes a difference.
There's something about your love of Madonna songs and musicals that make it so that you will not be able to handle this rivet.
I've worked with electricians over the course of my life on construction projects who were male, female, gay, straight, even a couple of trans ones, which could not have been easy for those individuals to get into that trade. But here's the thing that's interesting, because they all belong to IBEW, which is the International Brotherhood of Electrical Workers, the union. The union basically lays down the law and said, we are all equal, period. Period. Done. And what happens is those who become union members and get into the union discover that, you know what, we're all treated equally and we're all paid a really good wage because of the union. Maybe this person's gender ideology and sexuality has nothing to do with the work that they do on the project that we're on. Some of the most balanced, level-headed individuals I've ever met in my life, and this is the truth, I've met on construction sites. And every time I was surprised and impressed. Every single time. And do not kid yourself. Just because you're a construction worker doesn't mean you're not well informed. Hello. Hi. We have these things called books, and some of us like to read them. Just because I chose a line of work that I was able to do doesn't mean I'm stupid. Doesn't mean I'm uninformed.
Exactly. And just because I have a predilection for fabulous and tasteful dinner parties doesn't mean I can't balance a budget.
Exactly.
Right? In fact, my ability to throw fabulous and tasteful dinner parties and still be able to afford my mortgage would probably be an indication that I'm very good at managing a budget. Just say. All right. But with the good came a lot more mixed parts of that legacy. For example, the blood donation ban was largely lifted, which is something that Trudeau promised to do, but he didn't really have the authority to make it happen. And we talked about this on the show too, because governments cannot direct an arm's length regulator. And they had this scientific process that was extremely long and arduous, but it had steps. And every time something was lifted, it always coincided at the time that that step would actually have been scheduled to happen. So the government directed funds. However, given that they weren't able to do that, the government directed funds towards research so that Canadian Blood Services and Héma-Québec could update their regulations, and then took credit when they did 8 years later, when again they didn't have the authority to make the changes. Meanwhile, their funding for HIV programs across the country was slow to roll out after being promised, and saw certain long-term programs forced to close when their funding wasn't renewed. Trudeau and company talked a good game about measuring equality and equity through tools like Gender-Based Analysis Plus, which seeks to evaluate policies by how they affect not only gender, but other intersectional identities like race, sexuality, or disability. However, they didn't actually do any of the work other than just say GBA plus in reports, and the Auditor General called them out as a result. There has been a general recognition among many Canadian pundits that for this government, the announcement is the policy rather than the implementation. As well, Trudeau and his government didn't make progress on employment equity legislation to enshrine the status for queer and trans people. Trudeau's international record was also a mixed bag. While he did make a public admonition of Italian Prime Minister Giorgia Meloni in their first meeting for her curtailing of the rights of LGBTQ plus parents in her country, the topic never came up again as the alliance of Western countries in defense of Ukraine took precedence. I'm sorry, that must be LGBT people in their country, but there was something having to do with adoption as well with in her measures. Trudeau, sorry, let me go back to the end of the previous sentence there. Trudeau's international record was also a mixed bag. While he did make a public admonition of Italian Prime Minister Giorgia Meloni in their first meeting for her curtailing the rights of LGBTQ plus people in her country, the topic never came up again as the alliance of Western countries in defense of Ukraine took precedence. And Giorgia Meloni kind of surprised the whole world because, yeah, the Italian party that she represents does have a bit of a fascist history, and nobody suspected that she would be full-throated. No, we're supporting Ukraine. So that was a bit of a zig when everybody expected her to zag. So I'm guessing everybody said, well, if you're willing to be in on Ukraine, hey, you can sit at her table. So I'm sure there must have been some very interesting discussions behind the scenes to get everybody on a similar page. But I'm sure that they were very, very happy to have the leader of Italy, which is a G7 nation, on that side rather than going the other way, because that was the fear at the moment. Trudeau gave clearly inadequate responses in the face of Uganda's anti-gay laws, sentencing people to death, by the way. Yeah. And didn't take the opportunity of Commonwealth gatherings, especially during the coronation of King Charles III, to press delinquent leaders on queer and trans rights. Nor did he attend last year's Commonwealth Heads of Government meeting in Samoa. As well, in spite of clear demands from the diplomatic community and members of his own cabinet, Trudeau never appointed a special envoy for LGBTQ plus human rights. As party leader, Trudeau also treated one of the most visibly queer ridings in the country, Toronto Centre, somewhat cavalierly. Because it was a, quote, safe liberal seat, Trudeau used it to parachute his star candidates into the riding without a nomination contest, first with Beryl Morneau and then Marcy Ian. When queer members of the community, including economist Brett House, had been organizing a nomination bid, and for all of his enthusiasm about showing up at Pride celebrations around the country, Trudeau gradually stopped attending most of them as time went on. There can be no doubt that Trudeau did a great deal for queer and trans Canadians over his near decade in power, but as with so many things with his government, some of that allyship wound up being performative, particularly once the easy wins were accomplished. This leaves it up to Trudeau's successor, Mark Carney, to take on the heavy lifting with the things that didn't get the time, attention, or funding that they deserved. Carney, however, has been completely silent on queer and trans issues to date, something that is concerning because being completely economy-focused as he promises to be can lead to being blinkered about social realities of vulnerable Canadians. And I'm sure that the people that are having some concerns are wondering where he's standing. I probably have more questions given that he mentioned in his speech that he went to church, that he does go to church. And that he seems to be an economic conservative. So people are wondering. I would have a feeling that I have no idea where he stands at either. I don't get a read at all based on anything that he said one way or another, good or bad. But yes, at some point the topic's going to come up, and we're going to have to hear what he has to say on that, and whether or not it's full-throated or whether or not it's just sort of a benign, but a boilerplate statement, nonetheless, which means that, okay, nothing bad is going to happen, but we're probably not going to get a lot of attention either. Right. Unless something major really happens. There's a line in that last paragraph too, where it says, there can be no doubt that Trudeau did a great deal for queer and trans Canadians over his near decade in power, but as with so many things with his government, some of that allyship wound up being performative, particularly once the easy wins were accomplished. There are probably a lot of people in the Indigenous community who will say the same thing, particularly with the calls to action for the Truth and Reconciliation Committee, the ones that require a lot more work. I don't think were taken on with as much enthusiasm. Because it's hard work.
Indeed it is.
And there's not a lot of political payoff. If you're being crass, the 2015 election that saw Trudeau come in as Prime Minister had the highest Indigenous vote yet. But I'm not sure what percent of the population Indigenous Canadians are. But everybody else that's not affected by that directly and don't think about it, whatnot, when there's a land back thing or an apology, or when there's more water, potable water on a reserve, somebody in suburban Regina is not going to give Trudeau points for that.
No.
Someone in downtown Toronto may not give Trudeau points for that.
That's a distinct possibility too, yes.
Right. The thing in politics often is when you have various constituencies and communities, doing the right thing by them might still be the right thing. But if your most valuable asset is your time, and you're spending time doing something that does help someone, but that nobody's going to see, nobody's going to care about, well, I mean, you should still do it, but there's the reality of politics. I've got the choice of doing that or doing this thing that, there's going to be a press conference and 3 million people are going to tune in and they're going to see this and much. I think I'm going to go get 3 million votes. Or talk to 3 million people rather than, 12,000 or 300,000. Or these crass decisions do get made. It's not. I hate it when I have to talk this way, but I mean, that's the real politic, right? Somebody's making these decisions. These people get attention. These people don't get attention because there's more for it and more for us in this, right? It's not only about just what's for the people. The politicians are wondering, and the parties, what's in it for them as well. How can we use this? How can we market this? How can we sell this? How can we spend this? How can we?
Right.
Right? How can we build on this? How can we take this thing that we did with this community and go to another community? See, we did this, and and do more. But there's always another. There is a motivation to everything that does not necessarily have to do with the people being served. That goes along with it. So yeah, I wanted to present these two perspectives, however, right? Because there's a lot of criticism of Trudeau of maybe having lost sight of the financial things. And in a way, yes, in terms that he doesn't speak about them a lot and whatnot. But those things were in good hands, right? There's a reason that we, after COVID and after everything, and after a decade of Harper, we're at a debt that are servicing the debt's only 11 cents on the dollar. And as with higher interest rates as well. Yeah. Economically, we were rather well managed.
Yes.
But it is also true that our Prime Minister didn't spend much of the 4 years standing in front of a mic speaking about economy.
He was busy taking care of other things.
Yeah.
But pandemic.
But it's true.
Mm-hmm.
Right? Again, there's only so many hours in the day and there's so much bandwidth and attention span. And if you're saving people's lives because there's a pandemic going on and you're not talking about the economy, well, everyone says, well, you never talk about the economy. Well, yeah. It's like, But then you're sitting there going like, what do you think CERB was in this EWS? No, that was the economy. I was talking economy. It's like, yes, it was couched in pandemic stuff and keeping people whole and whatnot, like, but there was an economic reason to keep people whole. I was managing the economy. I was making sure there was an economy for everybody to come back to. It's like,
Yeah.
But that's what I mean. This is where when I'm talking about PR and spin, you could have framed it. You could have gotten in front of the mic every day. It's like this. This is how we protect the economy. We'll give that so that, like this. But you turn around and say, we got to keep people whole. We'll have your backs. This is a scary time. We'll have you. Right? Don't worry. We got you. Because it was the right message at the time.
It was, and it will be reviewed as such. History will shine and smile upon that decision.
Yeah, and also the decision to spend more time comforting people and bringing people along.
Yes,
rather than saying, hey, the economy is more important to you. We're only doing this for you because we want to save the economy.
Well,
right? Rather than we're doing this for you because we care about you.
We'll give you a nice big tax cut, but I don't have any income. Well, we're going to give you a big tax cut.
Don't worry. It'll trickle down. You'll feel it eventually.
Well, it's the whole conservative ideology as evidenced by this most recent Leger poll. I don't know if you've seen this, sir. This is, do you have a favorable or unfavorable impression of President Donald Trump?
Mm-hmm.
Canada, 80% unfavorable. 11% are favorable. The Liberal Party is 95, BQ 95, NDP 94, and the Green Party 83% unfavorable impression. The Conservative Party of Canada, 62% unfavorable, 6% don't know enough, 6% unsure, and 26% have a favorable opinion or impression of Donald Trump.
Mm-hmm.
Federal poll from Leger fielded March 7th to 10th, 2025. Total sample of 1,548 Canadian respondents.
Mm-hmm. That's a big sample, too.
That is a big sample. Yeah. And again, you know how I feel about polls, but it's like conservatives seem to want to sell us out to the Americans.
It would seem so. Now, before we move on from the Prime Minister to Mr. Carney, Mr. Grizzly, that's three misters. I just sent you a very quick clip. It's only about 43 seconds. It was the last thing the Prime Minister wanted to tell us before he signs off.
Okay, let's have a look. See what he's got to say. I'll just cue this up here and bring this on in. And we'll have a listen to what the PM has to say. I don't know why it did that. It's supposed to do that. There we go.
I am so proud of Canadians. I'm proud to have served a country full of people who stand up for what's right, rise to every occasion, and always have each other's backs when it matters most. This may be my last day here in this office, but I will always be boldly and unapologetically Canadian. My only ask is that no matter what the world throws at us, you always be the same.
So, as we get ready to pass the torch, thank you, Prime Minister Justin Trudeau. You did not have an easy job. I would not have wanted to be Prime Minister. There are many times in my life I would have wanted to be Prime Minister. I would not have wanted to be Prime Minister over the last decade.
Oh, goodness, no. And look, we're going to be called soy boy, liberal cucks, blah-de-de-blah-de-de. But go ahead, call us whatever you want. I really don't care. I don't care. I've said time and time again, I am not a liberal. I'm not a conservative. I'm not a Green. I'm not an NDP. I belong to no political party. I never will. I vote for the best candidate in my riding who will do the most for the community that I live in and the members of my community, and especially the members of my community who do not have a voice. The person who will speak up for them is the person I'm voting for. And I'm not talking about some right-wing, batshit crazy lunatic spewing conspiracy theories. That person doesn't need a voice. That person needs therapy and medication. I'm talking about the underprivileged, the marginalized, the parent who has a child with autism, the person who has their parents in a long-term care home, the person who's unemployed and on the streets with their hand out because ODSP doesn't pay them a wage or give them enough money to survive on, so that they have to go out and put their hand out and ask for change. It's wrong that that should exist.
Right.
We're a filthy rich country, and we allow this to happen. We not only do we allow it to happen, we damn well support it. There's no reason for it. None. We need to do better for each other.
Right.
We stand together or we fall apart.
Right. Absolutely. You nailed it, Mr. Rizzi, right there. So, we're getting ready to pass the torch. Later on today, there will be a ceremony at Rideau Hall, and Mark Carney will be there, and he will take the oath, the oaths, because there are several oaths to take, and he will officially be the 24th Prime Minister of Canada once that happens. There's lots of stuff that's been going on. We talked about Marcy Ian in the previous article. She will not be running again. Lawrence Macaulay.
Oh, she's not? I didn't know
No,
that.
I don't. Yeah, I know. Yeah, she won't be running again. Lawrence Macaulay from Prince Edward Island, who's I think the longest serving MP from Prince Edward Island, has decided that he will not be running again. Mark Holland, who had supported Chrystia Freeland in the leadership race and is currently the Minister of Health, has announced that he will not be running again as well. Cabinet, it seems that for this one will be smaller. Cabinet right now is 36 plus the Prime Minister for 37. They're expecting as small as 15 and as high as 20, maybe 21, including Mark Carney.
Well, and apparently Karina Gould is not going to be in Cabinet.
It would seem so, according to the rumors, which is really interesting. I would not read too much into that now.
No.
Because we are going into an election, and assuming Mark Carney wins, he will have to, present an elder cabinet, right? So I'm guessing that right now, if the message is going to be very curtailed and is going to be very specific, he's choosing, we'll have a Minister of Justice and obviously, Indigenous relations and all that kind of stuff. But environment, climate change, natural resources might go together rather than being two separate industries. Even though it was a good idea to separate Crown Indigenous Affairs and the I don't remember what the name of the other department, they might get smushed back together for the next couple of days. Pardon?
Time will tell.
Time will tell. Hopefully that one's just for the next couple of days, because it really is a good idea to separate both. Things have been way more effective that way. But we'll see. But there will be a consolidation of portfolios that way. In order to do that, this might be the smallest cabinet since the 1950s. Out of cabinet for sure will be Mark Miller, the current immigration minister, Diane Leboutillier, who I think is the current minister of fisheries, and the Quebec lieutenant Jean-Yves Duclos. Again, I think all three of them do plan to run again, if I'm not mistaken. So again, don't read too much into the fact that they're not there, particularly Jean-Yves Duclos. Leblanc and Joly and François-Philippe Champagne are suspected that they will stay in place because they are the key, international trade, foreign affairs, and finance. And Dominic Leblanc also has responsibility for the border that he brought from him from his previous position. So those will probably stay in place. The rest, who knows? It seems that there might be space for Chrystia Freeland in some way there. Like I said, Gould will likely be out. That's the rumor, the word on the tweet at the moment. Gary Anandan Sangari, who is current minister, I believe, of Crown Indigenous Relations, apparently, I heard today, will make the cut. Again, this is all speculation, right? There is, and there was also word that Stephen Guilbeault, who a lot of people thought this would be a great time to throw him by the wayside. It's like, and we've been saying it for years. He's got to go. He's just not an effective communicator. Apparently, he will have a position of some kind, but he will no longer be an environment and climate change. When Mark Carney said that he was going to cut carbon tax, he wants to make sure that that message is very loud and clear. So Guilbeault is going to be moved out of that. I could see Jonathan Wilkinson taking it along with natural resources and put them all together again, especially I think since Wilkinson hasn't done before. Yeah. But he knows a lot about that. The other question is new people, because he's probably going to bring in some new people, some star candidates that he tends to have run. There has been some talk that Christy Clark may be one of these people. Again, not crazy about that decision if that would be the case, because she has shown us at the beginning of this leadership campaign that she has a very interesting relationship with truth. And I'm not particularly sure that that's a good thing. On the other side, she is a more progressive, more blue liberal type person who has a lot of status in British Columbia. And even though the Liberals are doing better polling in British Columbia, not well enough for their liking. And I'm not sure how appreciated she still is in British Columbia, but assuming that she thought that she could make a run for it, maybe there's some people from British Columbia in the chat that could let us know, although maybe not this early in the morning.
Probably.
I just remembered the time change.
3 hours ahead.
Yeah. Yes. But that would be an interesting decision. But the chance we might see a couple of new people, because they'll be given cabinet positions, they won't have seats. But then, if we're going to go to election before, it won't matter. But we might see a couple of people, star candidates, the people he thinks that he's able to draw, and they put in a couple of key positions. So keep your eyes peeled for that. There's got to be a surprise or two today with regard to that. And only for the sense that, one, he wants, given that there's going to be a lot of people from Trudeau that are remaining, right, where the Conservatives are going to see, they're all Justin. Look how much of Justin he came back. He's still keeping the same people. Well, of course, he's still keeping the same people because we haven't had an election.
What do you expect, right? Like, come on.
But if you do that and bring one or two people in because you do happen to have the opportunity this time to say, hey, you want to be a cabinet minister, you don't really have to run for a seat right now, not because the House is not going to come back, I guess, right? So you can. It's almost an ideal situation because it's almost like an ideal fantasy football situation. I would take this person, put there, and it's like, okay, well, it's like, picture this person as your international trade minister, or picture this person as your health minister, or picture this person as we go into an election. You could have this rather than here is the health minister being incumbent, or so it's like having an incumbent come back. So this is something that I think will happen over the next few days as well, is that Mark Carney will have people announcing that they plan to run, because they still have many nominations to fill, and a lot of these will be star candidates, and I assume that these will drip like this, one day, one or two here, another day, a couple here, another day, a couple here, and just to keep the drum beat going. It's like, hey, Carney's great, look at all the talent he's attracting, and who have you got, Pierre? Again. And that's going to be one of these things, because we've realized with this leadership race, and especially if Carney brings in some new talent, that the Liberal bench is very deep, and the Conservative bench, well, it's still pretty much a party one. It was like back in the day of Harper. There's not much going on down there.
No.
Like, and the further back on the benches you go, the less there is going on. Seriously. Whereas in the Liberal Party, I think you could probably put all the backbenchers on a dartboard throw-in, and you might come up with a quality person. Not so. There's a couple of special ones. Obviously, we found out that Mr. Chandra existed. Not exactly a winner on the Liberal benches, but I would be much more confident in my odds on the Liberal benches based on what I've seen so far. So we're going to have all these things come on. Apparently, it seems that one of the reasons that Christy Clark might be in as well is that they're looking to get someone that's known as being ideological conservative to come in as a sort of like to show, okay, another way to show Canada that it's not just Trudeau and we're willing to reach out, given that Trudeau was perceived as being so far left. That's why there was an overture to Jean Charest and Christy Clark. So I think that they're looking for someone like that they can bring in to show, see, we can reach across the aisle, especially at this time, right? We need some unity.
Mm-hmm.
And look at me leading by example. I went and got someone that you all think of as being more conservative, and I brought them in and I gave them a key position. So there's some narratives there that could be working. I heard also on the news that the Liberal jet has been reserved for the election. That's usually a good sign.
I did not know this.
Yes, but before Mark Carney calls an election, he'll probably, as we mentioned on the show, want to do one or two things internationally, to have a couple of visuals and get a little bit of buzz going. And it seems that there is indeed an official trip that is planned. And I'm trying to get the article open, but of course, this is where I'm having trouble working with a Mac for the first time, and I'm losing my buttons. So if you get the impression that I am stretching kits and cubs, that's because I am. All right, I'm almost there. Let's see. There we go. And that's where I enter this. No, that's not where I enter this because it's not that. It's not Control V now. It's the other weird button and V. There we go. Okay, now we're with you. I will get this down. But according to Stephanie Levitz, it takes a while. According to it's a whole new language. Yes. According to Stephanie Levitz, Robert Fife, and Najoud Al-Malis, that's a new name for me from the Globe and Mail. Stephanie Levitz is a senior reporter. Rob Fife, of course, the outer bureau chief. But Najoud Al-Malis is an economics reporter. Says, Mark Carney prepares tighter cabinet with many Trudeau stalwarts out. Mark Carney will be sworn in as Canada's 24th Prime Minister with a slimmer Liberal cabinet ahead of an election shaping up to be a contest with Pierre Poilievre's Conservatives over who is best to take on the threats posed by the Trump administration. According to Liberal insiders, the smaller cabinet of about 20 ministers will see the departures of longtime cabinet ministers from Prime Minister Justin Trudeau's front bench, such as Health Minister Mark Holland, Immigration Minister Mark Miller, and Quebec Lieutenant and Procurement Minister Jean-Yves Duclos. Treasury Board President Ginette Petitpas-Taylor and Fisheries Minister Diane Leboutillier are also not expected in cabinet any longer. Sorry. I have to cough. Sorry.
Well, you do that. That's what you hit the old mute button for. That's what that's all about, right? You hit the mute button when you got a cough. I'm doing a Tom Green impersonation. You got to hit the muting. You got to mute the button. You got to hit the mute button when you have to cough, so that nobody can hear you cough. So you have to mute it. Mute it. That's my Tom Green impersonation.
Expected to remain in high-profile positions are Finance Minister Dominic LeBlanc, Foreign Affairs Minister Melanie Joly, and Public Safety Minister David McKitty. Yes, sorry. I misspoke. I think I mentioned François-Philippe Champagne. Because he was at international trade, but I have a feeling that Chrystia Freeland might pop in at international trade, and François-Philippe Champagne might move to something also that needs another file that might need an Energizer Bunny. because he's very, very active. But David McGuinty, who's the public safety minister, will probably stay in place given that this is allegedly about the border. It's not anticipated that Mr. Carney will name a deputy prime minister, but Chrystia Freeland, who quit that position as well as her role as finance minister on December 16th and then ran for Liberal leadership, is expected to get a spot back in cabinet. She finished a distant second to Mr. Carney in the race. The Globe and Mail spoke to 12 Liberals who are not being identified as they were not authorized to publicly disclose cabinet deliberations. Mr. Carney, whose swearing in is scheduled to take place at Rideau Hall at 11 a.m. this morning, will take the reins of the government at a difficult time for Canada. As trade tensions escalate with the United States and President Donald Trump, among his first acts as Prime Minister, according to 4 other sources, will be a trip next week to Britain and France, which have also borne the brunt of Mr. Trump's tariffs. The Globe is not naming the sources because they were not authorized to discuss the matter publicly. One of the 4 sources, a British government official, said Mr. Carney is expected to meet with Prime Minister Keir Starmer and Foreign Secretary David Lammy, though specifics of the engagements have not yet been confirmed. On the eve of his swearing in, Mr. Carney posted a statement to social media saying he was building a government, quote, that will deliver what our country needs most. We're going to protect Canadians during this crisis and build a stronger economy for the future. In his own statement on social media, Mr. Duclos said he intends to run again for re-election in his Quebec riding and that Mr. Carney has his full support. Quote, I know of no other economists on the planet who are better prepared than he is to help us get through the crisis of the coming months and years and emerge even stronger from it in an economic, social, and environmental point of view. Several cabinet ministers had announced in recent months that they are not seeking re-election. Mr. Holland added his name to that list on Thursday. He backed Ms. Freeland in the Liberal Party leadership race. Mr. Carney's candidacy has given the Liberals a significant bump in the polls. The party said Thursday that it has raised $1 million since Mr. Carney's decisive victory on Sunday night, and apparently he raised about $5 million during that campaign.
Yeah, that's a substantial amount of money.
Yes, considering that he was also running for the leadership at the same time and didn't have time to do $1,750 plate to dinner every single night like Pierre does.
Almost
sometimes 2 in a day. Yes. While all this is going on, Pierre is still going to $1,750 a night fundraising dinners. He's been to at least 2 this week.
Oh, really? I did not know that. Well,
oh, yes. Thank you for standing up at this moment, Pierre. Thank you for working those phones, calling your contacts, making sure that everything, I guess. Oh, and also making some statements, some similar statements saying that, even though he hinted at that thing, we're conservatives. We don't believe in that when it comes to supports for Canadians who might be going through some things with the tariffs. He seems to be very tepid about wanting to say that he'll have our backs at the moment. But yeah, that's Pierre. The change in Liberal fortunes has prompted some MPs to reverse their decisions not to run again, including Transport and Internal Trade Minister Anita Anand, who has since become close to Mr. Carney, appearing with him at a Hamilton steel factory earlier this week. Wayne Long, I think, which was one of the first MPs who was calling for Trudeau to step down as far back as June or July of last year, has also announced that he is running again. Interesting. Anita Anand might also be someone that may be put in a very, very, very key position when it comes to dealing with Trump. Here, I would hope so, because with all the good work she's done, she finally deserves a position that has some high visibility. Because at procurement and treasury board, I mean, it's important stuff, but you don't get a lot. You don't get in front of the cameras a lot. And she's strikes me as a person who says what she means what she says, and has an incredible ability for follow through. And with someone like Trump, that's the type of person you need. Someone who's very, very, very deliberate and consequential, and Anita and clear and firm. And Anita Anand is all those things. I'm a big, big, big Anita Anand fan, if you haven't yet noticed. Sorry, I skipped a paragraph there. Mr. Poilievre's Conservatives, who have seen a double-digit polling lead over the Liberals evaporate in recent weeks, will try to make the case that Mr. Carney and his front bench cannot be easily divorced from the record of the Trudeau Liberals. But in shunting aside a number of Trudeau loyalists and shrinking the size of cabinet, and perhaps bringing in some new people, maybe someone that's known to be ideologically conservative, my editorial addition there. Mr. Carney will attempt to send a message of renewal, change, and a focus on tackling the threats posed by the U.S. president. In an interview with CNN on Thursday, Ms. Freeland said Mr. Carney retains her full confidence and is well placed to take on Mr. Trump. I watched the interview. She was really good in it, actually. Quote, Mark is going to be a fantastic prime minister, she said, according to a transcript shared by the network. He's the leader of my party. He has my full support. He's going to be terrific. And he has started off on a very, very good, clear note. He has said, you need to respect us. And I would say that that is the view of all Canadians. In addition to his cabinet, Mr. Carney is putting in place the staff who will surround him in the Prime Minister's office. His chief of staff is former Liberal MP and Cabinet Minister Marco Mendocino. Assisting him is Cindy Jenkins, who has served as a chief of staff to several Liberal cabinet ministers. Marjorie Mitchell, Mr. Trudeau's former deputy chief of staff, who left to join the party's election campaign team, will return to the PMO for a short period to assist and will then run for election as an MP in Mr. Trudeau's riding of Papineau. Other key players are Jane Deeks as the Director of Communications, Kevin Lemke as Director of Parliamentary Affairs and Issues, Angad Dillon as Director of Operations, and Tim Krupa handling policy. When the Trudeau government was first elected in 2015, the cabinet had 31 members, down from a peak of 40 in the last year of then Conservative Prime Minister Stephen Harper's government. So all the people complaining that Trudeau's government right now, still at 37 with 36 plus him, is too big, still didn't reach the 40 of Harper. Again, it's only bad when Liberals do it, for some reason. Mr. Harper started off with a cabinet of 26 members in 2006. Like the Harper government, the size of Mr. Trudeau's cabinet expanded over time, reaching 40 members by December 2024. So there you go. And a little tidbit there, of course, 11 a.m. is when all the ceremonies start for those of you who want to watch. So yes, Mr. Carney, in addition to making it very clear that there will be no talkie-talkie unless respecty happens, is also now heading off, making sure that he's spending some time talking to the leaders of France and the UK before calling the election, getting some clips, some visuals, being seen on the international stage, doing the prime ministerial thing, having other people talk about, oh my God, it's so great, especially. I'm sure that Keir Starmer will have wonderful things to say, given memories that he might have of him during his time as governor of the Bank of England and what he did to get the UK through the debacle that was Brexit. And still keep its head above water.
He had warned them not to do it. He said, this is a bad idea. They did it anyway. And he managed to get them through it as best he could. But it's like, I'm sorry, you literally poked holes in the hull of the ship that you're in. Yeah. And it's sinking. I'm going to do the best I can to keep it from sinking.
Yeah, and he did. And given that Macron was now the elder statesman of the world's democratic nations and is doing a lot to bring the European nations together, these are two very strategic people to be talking to.
Indeed.
At the current moment for the soon-to-be Prime Minister of Canada, Mark Carney. So whoever is planning his schedule from one comms person to another, good job. You're nailing it so far. Keep it up. Because, again, I might be biased, but these are exactly the things I would have done if I was advising. So send them to Hamilton. Send them somewhere international, quick. Get some visuals. We need some B-roll. Also during the campaign, right? You're going to need all those B-roll, right? And there's not many clips of him recently hobnobbing, right? So got to get a little bit some fresh material there. Yes. So the people who are doing the comm stuff, and hopefully during the campaign while he was crossing the country, they got a lot of B-roll while there, so that they don't have to use clips from Indonesia and present them as Canadian mountains.
Indeed. Just want to address Vista Synthetic asking the question: Do you, Guy, support the 51st state? No.
No.
Absolutely fucking not.
We don't even support you asking that question.
No.
That's how much we support it.
Are you asking if I have the minerals to pick up a rifle and go to battle to defend my nation? Test my mettle at your own fucking peril.
Yes, I do. I will learn to shoot if I need to.
I know how to, and I'm a very good shot, by the way.
I know Kit Hugh could teach me.
Yes, he has a range.
Yes. So, and it's not very far. So, and he also knows how because military experience.
Correct.
Right? So, yeah, I am a total pacifist.
Me
Total.
too. But I'm not a pushover.
Yeah.
Here's the thing that people fail to understand about us pacifists is that we want peace. We don't want to engage in war. That doesn't mean we won't do it when we fucking have to.
Right.
For all the right-wing Republican conservatives who say, we have guns. Yeah. So do the liberals and Democrats.
We have guns too. We just don't have dinner with them and take them out to movies and
my rifle wife.
Yes. We don't sleep with it. Yeah. Again, there is a difference between realizing that there can be a legitimate place for firearms in overall society and being an ammo-sexual. There's a lot of steps before we get there. All right. Before we move, we end today because there's a lot going on. There's also that big meeting that happened in the United States between Doug Ford, oh my God, François Philippe Champagne, Dominique Leblanc, and Howard Nuttlick that we talked about a little bit. There's a press conference that happened afterwards that I haven't finished listening to, so I won't bring you clips yet from it. But one of the journalists, when the press conference all started out, it really seemed that there wasn't all that much that they were talking about. So, we got to process, and we're discussing, we commitments for future talks and stuff like that. Well, okay, well, what did you get? Mm-hmm. What did you get? Like, the whole thing about this meeting is like, yeah, okay, fine. You got the meeting, which was good. We got the attention, but what's the purpose really of this meeting if the decision is like whatever passed through Trump's brain, Swiss cheese brain, in the last 30 seconds? Because let's put it this way: as much as Howard Nuttlick is a true sycophant and fast talker and big mouth and all that type of stuff, he has no power.
None. Zero. None.
He has no power. He's the fall guy.
Oh, yeah.
When the stuff goes bad, he's the one that's going to take the fall for Trump. Right? And economically, it is going to go bad if he doesn't pull back. So he is the one that's going to take the fall. That's just like, maybe they've pre-discussed it or whatnot like this. Maybe it's not going to be a surprise to him, but he is going to be the fall guy.
Without question.
He can say whatever he wants. Right? Oh, we need to do this like this, but but the president has the final say. Yeah. Okay. And you could say one thing and the president will you can be in the room with the president of the United States saying, well, this is our economic policy, and the president will turn around and say, actually, we're doing this. And embarrass you and humiliate you right there. Won't even bat an eye. So, but as the press conference is going on, journalists are asking more questions. Certain little snippets come out there, and you go, "Ooh, pay attention to that," or like this. And some of them are subtle, but one of the journalists, I think, it was Judy Trin, who I have to say I'm not a big fan of, because the questions are very, 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 very long, as if she's trying to show that she knows the subject well enough, but basically there was like, she spoke for 30 seconds, basically to essentially ask, what did you get out of this? Right. So you just ask, what did you get out of the meeting? Let's just go. Or sometimes she asks 5 questions in one. Like this good Dominique LeBlanc, Mark Carney caught her a couple of times. What do you do this? And if you do that, what is this? And if you do that, what is this? And if this happens, what do you think there? Okay, that's 4 questions. So, so I'm not particularly fond of that style. But she did ask a question that got to an insight. And we're like, oh, maybe that's why Mr. Lutnick was upset. And I think the reason why Mr. Lutnick was upset is that the three of them, I've got the feeling that Mr. Lutnick did not get very far in this meeting with the three. And I have a feeling that they brought to Mr. Lutnick the very, very, very clear message that we understand that your guy didn't like our last guy for some reason, whatever it is. But we got a new guy now. And we will not be doing the same thing with the new guy as we were doing with the old guy. Right? Right? And there is a reason that we can have some hope here. There's some people talking about Mark Carney back at the time that he was at the Bank of Canada and about his style. And it seems that Mark Carney has the ability to be very firm and clear and determined. This is according to Marco Bigliotti. Mark Carney says his unique resume makes him the right man to lead Canada during this tumultuous time. Facing steep tariffs from an increasingly antagonistic and unreliable neighbor, he said the country requires a steady hand that can help grow the economy and support workers and businesses from this existential threat. The former central banker has also taken pains to differentiate himself from his main rival, Conservative leader Pierre Poilievre, who he has often criticized as a, quote, career politician with no real-world experience. It's a message that found an audience during the Liberal leadership race where Carney cruised to victory on Sunday, winning some 86% of the vote. And it's something his team will likely tout during the federal race, the non-politician stepping into the arena in service of his country. But even before he thought of running for the Liberals, Carney was already causing a storm. Sources say that the hard-driving Carney was a disruptive force of change during his tenure as governor of the Bank of Canada, eager to shake up an often too complacent bureaucracy. These are words I like to hear. It's style that isn't without its critics. Some accuse Carney of being super hypercritical and overly demanding even when he decamped to take over the Bank of England. But a senior leader at the Bank of Canada during Carney's governorship says that it's a matter of perspective. Carney came from the private sector and had no tolerance for a slow-paced culture, especially as Canada faced a global financial meltdown in the late 2000s. Quote, when he joined the Bank of Canada, he had a private sector set of expectations about how fast things should get done, how informed we should be, how much should we be looking outside our own little bubble to figure out what's true, particularly on the financial side, the source said in an interview with iPolitics. To be frank, I think he had to wake up a few institutions. If we need to wake up the White House or the GOP,
Wake up.
seems like he might be the guy. Yeah. iPolitics isn't identifying any of the sources to allow them to freely share their experiences of working with Carney. The next Prime Minister of Canada was born almost as far as you can from Parliament in Fort Smith, Northwest Territories, though he mostly grew up in Edmonton. His father actually ran for the federal Liberals in an Edmonton riding in the 1980 election, coming a distant second to the PCs. Carney would move away from Alberta to study at Harvard and then Oxford before joining investment banking giant Goldman Sachs. In the early 2000s, Carney left the private sector to become the deputy governor of the Bank of Canada. Soon after, he was named as the senior associate deputy minister for the finance department, and in 2007, he became the governor of Bank of Canada. And I want to point this out because he was at Goldman Sachs, and he left Goldman Sachs to become the deputy governor of the bank. Deputy governor of the bank to serve his country, not the highest profile position. Right? Leaving to be the governor is one thing. Leaving to be the deputy governor and then to be the associate deputy minister of finance department, then became the governor of the Bank of Canada.
Correct.
So he didn't leave the private
not pay as much as the private sector does either.
Exactly. And the job he left for paid even less than the top job.
Correct.
Right? And then he did a whole other job to serve his country before. So
Which would
he left
lead
private
me-
sector to serve his country.
Which would lead me to believe that even though he is a wealthy man and has probably a few $1 million, it would lead me to believe that he's not greedy.
Mm-hmm. And that thing that he said, right? It's like, yes, we've heard this in some of the articles. Yes, I've gone to all those places, but it's my Canadian values that I brought to Harvard with me, to Oxford with me, to the Bank of Canada, to the Bank of England. This type of behavior in his career would seem to indicate that that is actually an authentic statement.
I would think so.
Mm-hmm. It wouldn't take long for Carney to make an impact. Canada was soon caught up in the 2008 financial crisis that had its root in the U.S. mortgage security market. The country was plunged into a recession in the late 2008, but the economy was able to return to growth in mid-2009, while Carney won praise from many, including the Conservative federal government, for his role steering the country's economy. Canada's heavily regulated banking sector was credited for preventing the same risky behavior stateside that ignited the crisis. And despite overseeing a relatively small economy, Carney emerged as an international banking star. For example, from 2011 to 2018, he headed up the Financial Stability Board, an international body created by the G20 that monitors and makes recommendations about the global financial system. I had missed that part in his resume. I didn't know he had done that. In 2013, Carney would leave Canada to take on the governor role at the Bank of England, and again he'd be faced with another crisis, though this one was decidedly self-inflicted. In 2016, the UK voted to withdraw from the European Union, sparking a wave of political and economic disruptions in the country. At the start of 2020, the country officially left the EU. Carney would steer the bank through the process, ultimately making his own exit in March 2020. Despite his departure, Carney has stayed in the public eye. In 2019, he was named a United Nations Special Envoy for Climate Action and Finance, a role he would only leave when he jumped into the Liberal leadership race early this year. So again, if people are wondering about his commitment to the environment, he held that position for 6 years as the envoy. Just so you know, it wasn't just fly by night. At the start of, wrong paragraph. It did. He also served as the chair and head of impact investing at Brookfield Asset Management and as a chair of the board of directors for Bloomberg LP. The Conservatives have accused Carney of supporting Brookfield moving its headquarters from Canada to New York City last fall. He was still chair when the decision was announced, but has since stepped away from the role. Carney has also used the progressive think tank Canada 2020, who served as chair of the advisory board, as a platform to talk about climate and the economy as a way to enter liberal political circles. He was rumored as a potential successor to Justin Trudeau long before the then Prime Minister served notice that he would be resigning in January. But despite his high-profile central bank roles and behind-the-scene candidacy, little is known about Carney the boss. Those who spoke to iPolitics painted a picture of an aggressive, demanding leader who held his team to the standards of a private sector investment bank environment. One source who worked with Carney during his tenure at the Bank of England said there's, quote, more than a little truth in the characterization, saying he knew many people, quote, who have been at the sharp end of Carney's criticisms. Carney is not without his defenders, however. The Bank of Canada source acknowledged that, quote, he was a, quote, very demanding boss and leader, but said that it felt it came, quote, from a really good place. For example, they pointed out that during the fiscal crisis, Carney got upset with staff who opted to read about challenges in the financial sector as opposed to calling contacts to learn what was happening on the ground. The source said they feel criticism about Carney's management is actually quite unfair, and suggested that it came from people who scoffed at being held to a high standard, especially in a bureaucratic environment that is not used to the pressures of a private sector. They added that despite being, quote, a demanding leader, Carney was also, quote, a caring boss who would accommodate staff and who needed to leave work for family or personal reasons. The source also credited Carney for elevating Canada's standing on the global stage, saying he was able to put the country at the forefront of international financial reform discussions. Quote, people are saying he's no shrinking violet. That's absolutely true. If they think that he's a nightmare, well, that's in the eye of the beholder, isn't it? Because for me, I thought he was great for the Bank of Canada. He put us at the table when it came to the international financial reforms, and we needed to be, because the US and in the EU were going to step all over us, making rules that didn't suit a smaller economy. Another senior source who worked closely with Carney during his Bank of Canada governorship said the Prime Minister designate, quote, clearly wanted to be and usually was the smartest and best prepared guy in the room. as you keep on pointing out, Mr. Grizzly. The source told iPolitics that Carney's leadership style differed considerably from other central bank governors, particularly because he would ask a variety of lower-level staff members for their input. As such, they continued, Carney, quote, empowered the younger people at the bank, but with empowerment came expectations. Quote, he wanted people to give him solid information, they said. He didn't want people to waffle, and he didn't take half answers. It did put large demands on people working for him, certainly compared to other governors I've worked with, as he was much more demanding, but I think he was demanding of himself as well as other people. When asked if Carney's behavior ever became problematic, the source said it never reached a, quote, newsworthy event. Quote, he's got this combination of being smart, but also this considerable toughness, they said. He was pretty direct in his style, but you get used to the styles of different leaders. So there you go. So again, a statement, this adds some color and texture and some weight to this seeming statement of his that he hasn't said firmly, but that he did make a point of saying that he is hoping to enter further discussions with respect for our sovereignty being a given, and that we will be working on a long-term solution rather than how do we just get through the next 30 days. And if this is not what's on the table, it does not look like he's prepared to talk. It'll be interesting. It's a bit of a power move. And given that he's the first to make it, because Trump hasn't had a chance to say a lot about Carney yet, he's the one that's setting the tone. So when they say that he's got this driving energy, the relationship with Trump, he has decided to take the dominant position and drive it with such a statement. So we'll see how that pans and that works out. So we thank the Prime Minister. Clearly, good service. Overall, did a very, very good job. Clearly, not unanimously liked, but no leader ever is. Made tough decisions when needed to be, showed that government could be very nimble when it needed to be, and actually did show that government could be a force for good in the lives of people. Mainly with the pandemic, but with other things too. I mean, lifting hundreds of thousands of kids out of poverty is
a big deal.
It is a big deal. And let's not forget all the other things that we mentioned over the course of the years and the past months, particularly the emphasis on diversifying our economy and our trade partners, right? The free trade deal with Europe, the free trade deal with the CPP, TPP countries. And I've been reading a lot yesterday when I said that Canada doesn't do a lot of business with Mexico. Not really, but it seems that given that Mexico and Canada are both signatories to the CPTPP, we've been making additional trade negotiations that go beyond NAFTA between us and Mexico in the context of CPTPP. So that part I had completely missed, but it seems that we had been doing the work of deepening relationships with Mexico not through CUSMA or USMCA, but through CPTPP. Clever.
Mm-hmm.
Free trade deal with Indonesia, free trade deal with Ecuador. So, and then, of course, right, Virologics, the new mRNA plant for vaccines.
Slightly
the first
different.
one. Yes, really, totally different. Here in Canada, the AI technology, the EV, more stuff in aerospace, and in knowledge sectors.
Mm-hmm.
Well, high value jobs. So, this Prime Minister has done a lot. It has really done a lot. We commend him. It's overall, after 9-10 years, it is a very, very, very good record. I believe that history will be very, very kind to him.
Well, even the National Post wrote a story about he kept something like 94% of his promises. 94, 92, and they're like, no, that's the most of any prime minister in the last 50 years. So,
yeah, the big blight on his record is probably going to be for most people electoral reform.
Yes, yeah. Oh, and he said that's his biggest regret too.
Yep.
He wanted ranked ballots, though.
Yeah,
that's what he wanted.
He should have just campaigned on that election rather than saying electoral reform generally. because it was the more acceptable term that could. It had a bigger pool in the Venn diagram.
Well, everybody thought it
Accessible
was going to
pool.
be a proportional representation, and he said,
Yes.
"No, I want ranked ballots." That was so. Everybody's like, "Well, he promised proportional representation." No, he never did anything.
No, he never did. He
Never did anything
promised
of the
that.
sort.
Yeah. The Prime Minister was very, very, very precise with his words, which was the thing that got him in trouble.
Yes.
By being that precise to make sure that not to not promote it, he got himself into trouble.
Indeed.
All right, Mr. Grizzly, do we have a show?
We do indeed, sir.
All right, kits and cubs, that's the end of this episode of the Daily Beaver Morning Show. We hope that you love listening to us because we love making this for you. Remember, sharing is caring and word of mouth is priceless. So please tell your peeps and poops all about us. We like it when you do that, and it really helps us out a lot. If you would like to make sure that you do not miss an episode, you do not have to, especially in podcast form, thanks to the Ray Girl. That QR code that's there is something that you just scan, and it'll bring you to our pod page, podpage.com/the True North Eager Beaver. All in, no, not all in one word, with a hyphen between each one of those words. And when you click subscribe there, when we have something fresh off the bandwidth, we come directly to you. We make it really easy. Yeah. Now, if you would like to support us in other ways, why don't you surf on down to our YouTube page, True North Eager Beaver Media, where Kits, Cassie, and Elaine will certainly be urging you to smash with our buttons. Go on, get freaky, have a good time. Like, share, subscribe. They're all there. Click 1, click 2, click 3. Hey, we don't judge. Have fun. Helps us out with the algorithm too. So thanks, eh? If you would like to help us out in other ways, because, well, we do incur some costs to bring this show to you, internet fees, subscription fees, all that type of stuff. If you'd like to help us out with that because you think that we do a good job and you'd like to encourage us to do more, that QR code that's by Mr. Grizzly's head will bring you to the Eager Beaver Lodge Emergency Hydration Fund. Put something in their cup, because nobody likes a dry beaver.
I'm not going to say anything. I'm saying
coffee, ko-fi.com/eagerbeaver, all in one word. If you go there, you will find our tip jar. If you leave us a little coinage, make something jingle in there, well, we would be very, very, very grateful. Hey, and it also increases your sex appeal by 37.2%. Tipping's very sexy. Just saying. It's just science. We proved it in our labs. Sometimes I tip myself.
I don't even know.
I saw that comment from Kit James in the chat earlier today saying that I was looking handsome today. So thank you. I appreciate that. Flattery will get you everywhere with the Queen. So if you would like to donate, thank you so very much. Now, if you're not able to donate, please don't worry. The gifts of your attention and participation are the ones that matter the most to us, and we love to hear from you. truenortheagerbeaver@gmail.com is our email address, or you can write us at the Blue Sky Beaver Lodge at True Eager, The Bad Place, also at Trigger, or you could go to our Facebook page, our original home, True North Eager Beaver, or if you're listening on YouTube, right down here in the comment section. We do read everything. We don't have a chance to answer everybody, but we do read everything, and everything you tell us goes back into the show and makes it better. truenortheagerbeaver at gmail.com is also an address to which you can send us a direct donation if you would like to bypass the USC bros, because coffee does go through PayPal. So if you would like to make sure that you do your transaction in a 100% Canadian manner through a Canadian bank and then to us, just a direct email transfer, truenortheagerbeaver@gmail.com is the way that you do it.
And the money's deposited into the account immediately,
Exactly.
directly. We don't even, it's just a superfluous. It's just, you send it, it shows up. That's it. Simple.
Seamless, I think is the word you're looking for.
Seamless.
Because democracy is something that you do. Today, tune in.
Yeah, give it a go.
11 Eastern time. Give it a watch. I don't know if I will do a special thing because right now I would have to charge the battery up. I don't know if I'll have enough juice for then. But if I can, I might pop in and say hello.
You haven't got your webcam plugged into your Mac yet?
No, it is, but we haven't had a chance to test, so I don't know if I can broadcast yet.
Right. Okay. Sorry.
Yeah, that's the one that I'm waiting for. So maybe I'll pop in for that. Who knows? Stay tuned. Do a little something. I'll be watching anyway, so I might as well stop in.
I'm going to be taking a nap.
Yeah.
The 2 hours sleep I had is not nearly enough.
No. Yeah, you take a nap. Mr. Grizzly, do you have some words of wisdom?
Other
Other than naps are good.
Words of wisdom in photographic form, if you will. This is in Nova Scotia right now. It's an IPA, East Coast IPA from 9 Locks. Frig off underneath the United States sign at the liquor store. Frig off, eh?
Frig off, eh?
That's totally Canadian.
I almost want to say like frig off hosers, but I don't think they deserve the term hoser.
No.
I don't think they are worthy of the term hoser.
And remember that DEI in the United States of America stands for Donald and Elon's incompetence. Don't let DEI destroy our democracy. I knew you'd like
that. I like that. Chef's kiss.
Indeed.
Kids and cubs, it could be a tough world out there. So please be kind to and gentle with yourself, because if you don't first start with yourself, with who? Mr. Grizzly, please cue the cock. You are listening to a True North Eager Beaver Media Incorporated podcast. The True North Eager Beaver podcasts are proudly brought to you by our founding sponsors, the Misfit Mysteries from Corvid Moon Publishing, your source for science fiction, fantasy, and cozy mysteries featuring a broad diversity of characters. CanadianTarot.com, their uniquely Canadian online eclectic tarot community, and The Peppermaster, hot pepper sauces made from farm-fresh ingredients to thrill your taste buds and expand your mind. We are grateful to the Crier Media Network for its support, Pete Jarvis for our artwork, and Paul Joseph Something for our opening and closing sequence music. All right. One little Canadian who make us proud moment. We've been talking a lot on the show about a tennis player named Victoria Mboko. She had won 20 matches in a row so far to start the year, and then lost the first round of her next tournament. Then the next tournament she played after that, she won it.
Well,
5 tournaments this year. 5 out of 6 tournaments in singles that she's entered, she's won. She's now 166 in the world, and she has been named to Canada's Billie Jean King Cup team, who will be playing in Japan very soon in the first round to try and get back up to the top again.
Cool.
So, way to go, Vicky.
I have something to share here. I think you'll enjoy this. Let me just cue it up correctly here. If I can get it into.
Oh yes, I remember him.
Position. Yes. This is.
We've played him before, yeah.
Now, I got a message for all you liberals out there. You want my gun, my firearm? Come take it from me. Just walk through my door, come into my home, and take it from me. With your weak, soft, liberal, girlish hands. Just try to put those hands on me. Those soft, liberal hands. Put them on me, on my body. Just slowly, gently dragging your fingers up and down my arm, giving me goosebumps. You want my gun? Come kiss me for it. But not like right away. Don't be too obvious with it. Let's do that thing where our faces get close to each other. And you know it's going to happen. It's just a matter of time. You just stare at each other's lips. But you're waiting for the right signal to give yourself over to them completely. Like in a walk to remember. Come do that for my gun. Bite my lip and play with my hair. For my firearm. If you want my gun, come spank me for it. Not like too hard, but like still hard, you know? Like hurt me but make me feel safe at the same time. You pussy liberals.
That is 5 years old. 4 years old in October. It turned 4. He put that up on October 8th, 2020, and I still laugh at it because it's hilarious.
Need a little water there.
And
Sprit
I
myself.
still laugh at it because it's funny. All righty. Have a great weekend, folks.